or any other comments that anybody has? Okay. Yeah, you can come up anytime. Yeah, you can come up now.
Denny Harkeye, 7120 Hickory. As you all may know, I watched and listened carefully to the Recreation Committee meeting that took place on Tuesday, November 16th. Based on my observations, I'm not sure who, if anyone, is really in charge of the overall situation, and for that matter, who, if anyone, is accountable to the leader of the team. But if Walton Hills is going to run a recreation department, along with an event center, both of these projects need to start off with someone actually making the decision as to who has the passion, the ability, and the time that's required for the village to succeed at running the recreation department and the event center at the same time. Certainly, the person in charge should at least attend committee meetings, and I'm not convinced that we have that person at the present time. In summary, I can see that not one person had a complete vision or a total plan for what to do as we move forward, but I did hear a few good suggestions, such as someone suggested increasing the rental fee to an amount that's in line with the local market. This is a good start, and it should work provided that what the village has to offer is perceived by the potential renters as a comparable value in the marketplace based on our facility and our fees. If we still intend to rent to outsiders as well as residents, we should increase the rate for residents, so it's the same for everyone. It makes little sense to give value away for free to anyone, especially since the village is not a charitable organization. Someone suggested renting only to residents. This is a good idea, provided that enough residents will rent it, and I will talk about that more in a minute. Someone suggested that we run it for a year and see what happens. If the village is going to succeed at this, a solid business plan needs to be carefully thought out and properly implemented. For the sake of example, I will compare the event center to a magnificent yacht, which it appears that some folks consider this building to be. You can build the most luxurious, state-of-the-art mega yacht in the world, have all the fuel tanks full, have the engines running, have all the best safety and navigation equipment on board, including radar, sonar, GPS, the most powerful searchlights in the world. You can even have a competent captain and a dedicated, capable crew. But if you shove it out to sea without charting a course allowing it to aimlessly drift, it will eventually crash. This is exactly what will happen to our event center if no one makes a detailed and specific plan with checkpoints along the way so that proper adjustments or course corrections can be made, rather than just waiting a year to do anything except just, quote, see how it goes. In regards to this, our administration should see complete income and expense reports at the end of every month so they can be reviewed and dealt with efficiently. This is just plan A, where step one is to be totally aware of exactly what all the revenues and costs are. Step two must be to decide based on potential sources of revenue, such as rentals, etc., will be needed to meet the break-even point or to reach a level of loss that is acceptable. Good business practice dictates that there must also be a backup plan B as well, just as carefully thought out and implemented as plan A. This is a plan as to what will be done if plan A is not meeting up to the goals and expectations that were initially established. Therefore, if it is decided that course corrections are needed, they should be done on a monthly basis. It is not a wise idea to run things for a whole year, and if success is not being achieved after 12 months, then begin to make decisions about what to do. Someone said we need to cover costs. As mentioned in Plan A, fixed and variable costs like utilities, linens, cleaning, pest control, landscaping, supplies, building maintenance, insurance are not going away. So by doing such things as raising the price for residents, charging for trash removal fees, requiring a larger deposit are all good ideas, especially since a $100 deposit is much too little and not nearly enough to ensure accountability. Someone suggested having a police officer on duty for non-residents. This is a very good suggestion, and in today's environment, this is a good idea for residents as well. However, this will have a cost that should be charged to the renter. Someone said that there would be a deadline for making decisions of February the 2nd, 2022. This was one suggestion, but why wait so long since this situation is urgent enough to start making decisions today? Someone said to give residents priority before renting to non-residents rather than having it just sit there and not being used. It is certainly not used enough most of the time, and it does need to be used more. Obviously, we, the residents, we want the residents to use it more. So here are some suggestions as how we can get that to happen. In marketing the event center as an asset to the village and the surrounding area, we should advertise the facility through all available means that cost as little as possible, such as every month on the village website, in the journal, and in the Owl, showing nice pictures of the facility, while suggesting possible uses along with posting a message on the marquee site saying that the event center is available to residents, the residents for rent with contact information. Since people who see the marquee have only a limited time to read it before the traffic light changes, and you want the message to stand out and be noticed, you could drop useless information that really does nothing. I bet that if you post that message for 1 week, you will get more resident rentals than ever before. Since we have the Journal and the Owl as established means of reaching the entire village, an announcement could be made that we have this wonderful asset that's not being used enough. We could post a calendar for the entire year showing the events that are already booked and the dates that are available. And booked events could also be posted on the village calendar on our website. This way, for example, if someone has a wedding or a party, they could get it on the schedule and people would feel a sense of urgency to get their plans made. Someone suggested charging a fee, a linen fee, if renters do not bring their own. That's a good idea. There have been complaints from local residents about too many cars and too much noise. If the facility continues to be a nuisance and a source of aggravation along with possible security issues, this should be a major concern to our administration when giving consideration as to whether we should continue or discontinue at all, especially if it's not even really being used. Someone said that residents are more likely to respect the facility and the property. This was implied, but I'm not so sure that we can count on that to be true. And this is a good reason to have a substantial security deposit and not give refunds to people who screw things up. Someone said, try it for a year, renting only to residents, was a suggestion. But unless residents begin to use it more, and unless that use generates a substantial increase in revenue, we will be sure to lose even more money. As I said before, to do it for 1 year as a test and then revisit does not seem like such a smart idea, unless, as I said before, a sensible plan A and B have been both put in place prior to proceeding with such a risky experiment. Someone said, get a person to give ideas for the program, such as residents. This was one of the best suggestions of the entire evening. Some residents have already offered this, but there have been no takers, which I believe to be a judgment error on the part of our administration, especially since, based on my observations, the administration in general does not seem to be very sure about exactly what to do. And since there are some residents who do know a lot about how to run a business and who are willing to offer productive suggestions, and in some cases perhaps also actually offer to help in other ways as well by participating in community meetings. Someone said we need more stuff for young people. I agree. It would be refreshing to see the kids do something more than just stare at a cell phone and text each other while they're sitting in the same room. My question is, who will be in charge of figuring that one out? Back in June, I heard about a survey asking residents what they would like in terms of recreation. That was going to be published, but sadly that never happened. Someone suggested adding fees to the Parker program. Sure, why not? Who's in charge of deciding the fees? Finally, in a brief summary, you all see that there have been some good ideas put on the table. All of that means nothing if no one actually does anything. So the real purpose of my message here is a call for immediate positive action by our mayor, our council, and our recreation director. And if things do not improve, then the future of the event center should not be decided by a few individuals in our administration, but rather by a vote from a majority of the citizens by adding the subject to a ballot either in May, November of 2022. Thank you for your time.
I'll comment. Thank you, Mr. Harkar. Well, got a lot of good ideas, and I appreciate those. On some of the other comments, as far as the rec director being at the last rec meeting, she's part-time. The meeting was called with less than a week. She had a prior commitment with her family, so I honored that. Okay? Very acceptable. Okay? And would always come to any other meeting. Not a problem. Okay, I asked council if they were okay with that, and they were okay with that. They wanted to conduct their recreation meeting, and it was a good thing, because you can, you know, there was positive things that came out of that. Okay. A few things that we're not having successful events and positive events. I beg to differ with that. In fact, Sunday, we probably had one of the most successful tree lighting ceremonies that we have had there. Well attended, between 125 and 150 people. Okay, some of us are in this room here that were there, and I'm sure would agree with me. Very positive things on social media. As you know, you've gotten the income statements from the village. Actually, the first year, well, 2018, we were a negative $891 when we rented it out to, you know, businesses. Now, as far as myself, I supported it. I voted for it. I will continue to support it because it isn't a money-making revenue. That's not why the village purchased it. We purchased it to offer some amenities to our residents, which almost every community, if not every community surrounding us, has some type of event center or civic center or something to hold their events. To answer one of your questions, which you didn't say but you've said to me in the past, why can't we go back to our room across the hall? There was no way that we could have held Sunday's event in the room across the hall and made people comfortable. There's just no way. It's not, as my kids grew up when we had less people attending the events, we were able to do it there. I could tell you what would have happened. People would have came, they would have seen everybody next to each other and crowded, and they would have left. And that would be terrible. People coming there with their grandchildren, their children, or just themselves to enjoy an event don't feel comfortable. At our event center, people were comfortable. Some people maybe wanted to wear a mask, not wear a mask, maybe not sit with everybody. They had space. We're very fortunate. It's what we needed. It's what we needed. To operate that community center with not any revenues between, what, about $50,000 to $60,000. Okay, if we did nothing, just operated it just for our events. That's not a large price to pay for offering recreation, yoga, different things we have up there, senior lunch, police training. We have police training up there, 220 police officers. Saved our village about $10,000. We don't pay for it. Because we host it, we train all our officers up there for free because we're the host. We've had many.
Multiple times a year, yeah.
Yeah, how many times a year?
I just said multiple times.
Multiple
a year.
times. It's just, so I'm never going to support selling it. That's fine. Somebody wants to start a referendum thing. I think it's an asset to the village. I don't think we can afford ever to build something like that. I think we would be moving backwards to go in the center across the way. I've stated before, can we do things better? Of course. We can do everything better. If I said we can't do things better, I wouldn't be a good leader. And I feel we are doing things better. I'll tell you, we got a lot of compliments on Sunday's event. Can we have more events? Of course. That was me who said I think we should rent it out. I would like to see this council here rent it out to just residents for a year. And I'll say it again, the reason is, I mean, there's many reasons, but what's disheartening to me is when a resident calls up to use that room for a wedding, a shower, a baptismal, a retirement party, or just a party, just to get together. And our staff has to tell a resident that it's booked to a non-resident. That's tough. It's something for us. It's something for our community. And it really shows all the time. The senior lunch is up there. It's the repasses. You know, we couldn't have the size repasses we have. If you're a resident, you can have a repass up there. The Women's Club puts it on, free of charge. One of the few things, no other communities offer that. We have to draw people into our community in other ways too. When people go to a community, they look around, they say, what do they offer me? I mean, we offer low taxes, we offer country atmosphere, and you want to be able to say you have some place to gather, some place to go, some place to rent. A lot of those suggestions are good. If council decides to rent it to non-residents, those fees, I agree, those fees need to be increased. There's some things. And prior to your statements, I have talked to people who run catering businesses. Okay, so just to clarify some statements that aren't true. Actually, Angela comes from a background, her parents had a catering business and actually
Yes,
a hall.
My parents owned a party center, and then I worked for someone else running their party center as well.
She has a good find. And Angela, what's great about this whole body, there's times when Angela's, you know, because she is our bean counter, she's very conservative and you know, says, hey, we need to do this and do that. I mean, so it's, but to say we haven't had good events or the residents haven't benefited from that center, I can tell you this, besides a few residents, I have very few complaints, almost all positives. So as the leader, you know, the mayor of the village, I have to go by how what the response is out there too, no different than council. But we're gonna continue to make it better. We're gonna continue to do that. Mr. Spitzenagel and the Recreation Committee agrees. We have to have more events and try to fill it, of course. We had a lot of cancellations. If you look at the numbers, 19 and 20, 2020 were tough. Even the beginning of 21, we're in the middle of COVID. We were booked, but they canceled. And then we were shut down. We had to follow the governor's initiative, and we couldn't allow people to rent. I mean, that's kind of beyond our control there. But we are very fortunate. It's not a very expensive facility to run. At one time, I was on council, and there was residents, we were going to build a rec center with a pool. I think we had a price of $1.5 million at that time, and this is probably 15 years ago. Thank God we didn't do that. We got a turnkey facility up there. Turn the lights off and you know, close the door. You know, you have a pool or you have some other, you know, large community centers. They're very costly. Just to run it with your staff. We have a part-time recreation director, and we have a part-time, or right now, a part-time assistant recreation director. I mean, so we add more things, you got to add staff too. And we've been very concerned about that because we've been wanting to stay within the budget. You know, it's a two. And then we got the issue about, as a community, nonprofit, we got to be careful how much we do make.
Exactly.
Otherwise, we lose our nonprofit status on that building, and we pay property tax. Then you got to outweigh your property tax with what you're making. And you'd be surprised. We might even go the other way. I've said these all many times before. And then remember the thing about that event center. That event center is in the country home district, okay? You can't put in any industry, you can't even put a business in there. Okay, unless we want to change the country home district. I don't think there's one person in this room that wants to change our country home district. That would ruin this village. That's why people come into this village. 1 acre lots, country home district. You know how many developers would love to buy that parcel and put little, less than quarter acres, 100 by maybe, not 40, but not maybe 50 by 60 or something. So, but we can't do it without changing. I would never, I don't think there's a councilman on here that would support changing the country home district. So you're limited. Guess what we can only sell to? A church. And the church can operate a catering or an event center like they did. You know how much revenue we're going to get from that? Nothing. We were the right fit for that facility. And we control it. We control it. When those residents have a complaint, we address it. When we bought that facility, we sold the house for, I think, $150,000
Yeah, 150,
next to
160.
it. So that took off. We got instant equity when we bought that, because we sold the house, we bought the house and the building together. We sold the house. That resident, nice young family, just every time I drive by, I love it. You see, just they took the house, they made it a home, and there's activity there. Every time the cars pull out, they get the lights and everything. Very patient. What do? So to say that residents have all these complaints and we do nothing about it, not a true statement. Not a true statement. What do? Our service department put up a beautiful fence, okay? And it did a lot of things. It just didn't block the neighbor. It also gave us a boundary there and more control for when there are weddings or different things and there's a police officer, people don't wander or do different things. Kind of sectioned it off. We've had some sign things. There's some talk. I've talked to a lot of those residents. If they call and they have a complaint, we address it. Just like any issue. I can tell you this, a lot of them had more complaints when they had no control over it. You have a private entity in there, we're going to maintain it too. We control it. Another big thing is we control the property. That's another fear. You sell it. You don't know who's going to go in there.
Mr. Mayor,
They might not be as good a neighbors as we are.
there's
Go
also another issue is that we still owe on it.
Yeah.
So if we sold it, we wouldn't even make any money.
No, we'd make a,
Well,
what we
small.
got,
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
what we paid on the
What we
note.
paid out, so we'd be back where we started from, and no event center. So, and it's not a business. I think it's really not a business, it's our event center. There's a little bit difference in, I think, philosophy. If it's a business, you want to make money. And we really can't make money, we just want to try and break even. Little different philosophy.
And I mean, your park doesn't make any money. Those are amenities. Those are for the residents to use. We buy services from the Lake Club. $20,000 we got in the contract. So we got $20,000 for the Lake Club. I'll say high. I'll go high. Let's say we don't rent that place out at all. We got $60,000. We're spending $80,000 on recreation for our residents. I bet you we're one of the lowest in the county on that price tag. You got Valley View, you got Macedonia, you put in a pool, gosh, you'll have that in you'll have 40,000 in chlorine. I mean, we know that from then put lifeguards. And then how would you like to have a pool inside and you can't hire lifeguards because there's nobody to hire. So now you've got a pool sitting there and no one is swimming. Talk about looking at that compared to an event center. Talk about feel like you're draining money. I mean, I'm out there. I talk to these mayors. I know what they're struggling, going through too. If the residents want to get an initiative and it goes on the ballot and we all get the vote on it, and so do I, and they want to sell, then this body has to go with that. That's what the residents want. But if you think this mayor is going to drive it, when I think it's one of the best things that we've done, you're barking up the wrong tree. You maybe can get council to help you out or residents or whatever. Now, if all of council came to me, I'm going to, I probably would support the body. I'm gonna give my opinion, but they're gonna have to have a good reason for it. I think it's a great asset to the village. I'll never say we can't do things better and stuff, because I'd be wrong to say that, give more programs, do this and that. But I'll tell you what, I think Sunday's a good example of us going in the right direction. I thought that was just a really nice event. We've just been getting a lot of pluses. We've gotten pluses from the time it opened. There's nothing negative about it. It's like the lake. How can you have something negative about recreation, about having, you know, a place, or even a repast, as Gloria always says, what the women's club does, a place that you go to and the women take care of everything, and you just take your family and put your family at ease, and it's in your backyard. You can go up there the night before and make it nice, put your collages. You're in a family environment. I've had 2 weddings there. It just was great. Had a baby shower there. I'm hoping I can have other events there. I encourage everybody. It's catching on, and that's what's saddest to me, is when we have to tell a resident, they call a month in advance, 2 months in advance, and we got to tell them, you can't get it because we got to rent it out. How do you think they feel? Just increase my taxes, you got me paying my garbage, now you bought an event center and I can't rent it. Well, that's why Don Kolaref says, let's try it for a year just with residents. Why not? Let's see how it does. What if we book it most of the time? What if we book it 75% with our residents? Then I know the recreation committee had a nice idea. Give the residents a chance, and then if no one books it, then put it out to a you know, but those are some things you have to look at, because you want to be fair. But I'm off my soapbox, because I've just been repeating myself. We got a big night here. We got the budget to put together. And we'd like to get that passed before the end of the year. If anybody else has any comments, feel free. Okay.
You want me to come up to the mic?
Yeah, that'd be the best, Steve.
Stephen Velk, 15153 Alexander Road. Mr. Mayor, I would agree with you. Sunday's event was probably the best event that we've had in the village in at least 2 years. We had a great time, and can't say enough about the event. We were thoroughly pleased. Everybody was enjoying themselves at the event. Great time. Would totally agree with you. You know, on the event center, I can segue off of some of Denny's comments about it. I'm with you. I think it's an asset to have that community center in the village. I wouldn't want to see it sold off or parted out or anything like that. I know we don't offer or try to operate it as a for-profit business. You know, I know you just mentioned that, you know, if we make a profit on it, we get taxed and all that. You know, I know other communities, when they make over, they just reinvest that money back into the facility, and then you avoid all of those penalties and taxes and all that stuff, because you're reinvesting that money back into the facility versus, you know, collecting a profit from it. You know, I mean, I fully understand that we want to look at a year worth of renting it out to just residents only. My only concern is that, you know, looking at what that budget has been for the last 3 years, can we afford to do that with the current financial state that we're in? You know, I mean, we're paying some of the bills, you know, light, electric, gas, utility, all that stuff with what we're getting on some of the rentals. So I worry, and I'm concerned that, you know, I know we had looked at renting it out for a day, and we found out it wasn't available. But, you know, we made do with across the way here. We made it happen. Not a big deal. Wasn't the end of the world. Made it happen. You know, I know that's probably, that stinks when you're a resident. You want to be able to rent the facilities that are in your community. You know, does it have to be a year that we would give that a chance? I mean, I know year's a long time in the grand scheme of things, and I worry that there's not going to be enough residents that are going to say that they need to rent the facility, and that facility is going to sit more vacant. And then if we do that year, how about we get more recreation programs for the families in the village up there, instead of, I'm not saying events, but more recreation-based activities for the residents to be able to utilize that facility more, instead of seeing that place pretty much dark Monday through Thursday, no lights on, you know. There's gotta be a better way so that, you know, the village sees it. You know, I know you see it as a benefit, I see it as a benefit, but there's a lot of folks that would see that number and say, ooh, we bought this facility and it sits there. You know, so, you know, if we had more recreation and, you know, we were spoiled with Carol and Carlene. You know, they always had something going on in the village for the families to do. And it just seems like, you know, recently we've really had not a lot of activities, and I get COVID is a, you know, is an issue, and that has pretty much capped a lot of stuff off. But, you know, hopefully going forward, you know, we'll look forward to more stuff that's gonna happen down there. That's all.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead, Angela.
Okay, so as someone who's been here 4 years and sees the ins, the outs, the events we've planned, other than not having trips for seniors, I can tell you we've had every single event, not counting the COVID year, that Carol and Carlene have had. There hasn't been anything less. We've opened up in the morning to have game time for the seniors. Nobody's showing up. So we're getting there and we're trying on that. I can speak to that, and I'm not even the one down there running it. We've gone to get refreshments to make sure we're all set for that to happen, and then nobody's coming. Resident rentals have picked up substantially. I'm not sure why nobody notices that, and I know you're not behind the scenes with the calendar, but the residents have started booking. So I don't think, the hard thing about saying not a whole year, it does seem like a long time when you're in this business and people book ahead. You know, we may already have residents booked the following year. So it's you know, it's a little bit of a mix, but you know, I don't personally get to do that calendar or take part in that. I have enough in my wheelhouse, but I know that it's happened because I ask what's going on now that we've kind of fizzled out of our non-resident rentals. What's it looking like? And I communicate with every department about this. And so there are residents, it's picking up. Now that everybody knows that it's there, and we've had some go in and say, oh yeah, I've been to this party, I forgot we had this, let me call and book a party. So I'm pretty confident that a year, it's gonna go by quicker than you think, because we already have things on the books for 2022 that are residents only. So it seems like a long stretch, but in the financial world, it's really not. It goes by like that.
You know, a point that you made, Mr. Belt, was you called to book the event center, and it was booked. But guess what? We were still able to offer you another option. So you were still accommodated, which is right. Not the same, but we're able to offer another option. When it comes to repasses and similar parties like that, we haven't been able to do that. That room's booked, guess what? Or we use one of the churches, okay? And then when COVID happened, if we would have been in that situation of working with someone, they shut down, we wouldn't even have that option either. So it's nice we do have that option of having both facilities. Actually 3 rooms, because we have 2 rooms down at the event center and then the 1 room here.
Yeah.
It's, yeah.
Who's actually in charge of running the event center at this point in time?
Natalie Buck. Maya, who was the assistant, she resigned. We haven't replaced that position yet.
Because I know we used to have somebody back in the day that was her, basically her only job. And I
Yeah.
can't remember if Nancy or.
It was Sandy, and then Sandy's,
I didn't-
and that was-
with that.
that was $2,400 a month that we paid that person to do
We-
just that.
Right.
And I didn't feel, I'm not myself alone, but I didn't feel we were getting our bang for our buck. So we eliminated that position. So we
The
operated.
person doing it also was ready
Yeah,
to step
we
out.
operated ourselves. We don't pay anybody to run that facility. That's,
Correct.
we were paying a third party before. So now we just have our rec director pay that.
And we are also feeling out that whole department down there because we did throw this into the lap of a part-time director and a part-time assistant at the time, so that we were not paying a third party. We're still assessing, was that a lot that we did to give you the rentals? Do we need to reconfigure? Do we need to look outside to have someone run it as a caterer, and then that's who everyone's gonna use as their caterer? That's something internally, we're all still trying to evaluate, because yes, we want to focus on programs. Yes, we want to make sure our events take off. We want to get trips ready for seniors. We want to make sure there's transportation and drivers and things scheduled. So we've dumped a lot into the lap of the rec department in the last year and a half since COVID. And so we're all still just like working out some kinks behind the scenes.
Have you guys explored? making-
Steve, I'm gonna have to have you come up to the mic. It's
Have you guys explored making that position a full-time position at any point in time? Because it just seems like there's a lot on one or 1.5 individuals' plates. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on all the time. You know, and unfortunately with the rentals, then that's a whole entirely another position. You know, that would be, you know, you're doing 2 jobs at once. You know, you're focusing on getting the recreation stuff done, and you're focusing on trying to do the rental center. You know, I mean, even to a point of, you know, is you can explore, you know, the Lake Club, we run trustees. You know, would there be something down the road with, you know, having something like Knights of Columbus? They're all volunteers. They run their hall. Can we find a trustee group that would be in charge of running events and stuff like that at the event center versus paying somebody $2,400 a month? You know,
we're not paying anybody right now.
I know you're not now, but I'm saying, you know, in looking forward, are there ways that we can explore, you know, if the rec director Natalie has too much on her plate now, you know, have we explored looking at that position and saying, hey, you know what, we had it as a part-time position, we can explore that as a full-time position, only because, you know, if you're here, you know, 30 hours a week or 25 hours a week, that's not enough for what the village requires right now. You know, especially with all the hats she's wearing then, obviously. I mean, just a thought.
Right. The answer is, we've been very conservative.
Right.
We've been very frugal. We know to increase events, you gotta increase staff. But we also know we're just starting to turn the ship. Okay, so it's you know, it's a balance. It's a tough balance. It's a tough balance when your revenues aren't much over your expenses. And I'm talking our village budget overall, like what we're doing tonight. So, and recreation is one of those. You know, we gotta be very, very careful. I mean, you've all heard me preach, we know we need recreation. Any healthy community needs recreation. You just can't go to work and not have a place. Even if you're in a fiscal emergency, the state even allows to keep your recreation open. Garfield Heights was a very good example, because people just can't go to work and not go anywhere. You need to get your anxiety out, you need it's healthy. But we're at that point, so we gotta be careful. We don't want to certainly put everything in recreation and then we're going in the red, in our budget. So it's been a balance, you know. What we need is more revenue.
Right.
Then we can hire more people for our event center,
Here.
not put some as much burden on the residents. So that's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. But yeah, we have looked at that, Steve, and we're gonna, if we want to do what we just talked about here, and that is have more events at that event center, we probably are gonna have to increase the staff.
I'm
we've been
sure
very
you would,
full.
only because, you know, if we're gonna, you know, push
Yeah.
it more to resident usage and not public usage for, you know, non-residents, we're gonna have to figure something out anyways, you know.
Right.
You know, even with resident usage just on the rentals, I think you're gonna have to find somebody to organize those events if you guys are saying that, you know, the rentals for residents are going up too. I mean, right now, from what I understand, and I don't know if that's all the
No, we
truth or
never
not.
would raise, we're not raising the rental fee on the residents.
Well, if I understand the truth on that, basically, when someone rents, whether it's a resident or a non-resident, you basically pick the keys up at the village hall here, and then you go down there and you rent the facility. There's nobody to check in the party, there's nobody to make sure that the party that didn't check off the boxes that says there's gonna be alcohol there,
Oh, no,
that
we
they
have a
need to
police
guard.
officer. If there's no, we have,
So-
that's not.
but does somebody
There's
physically
alcohol, you
check
have to have
that?
a police officer. A police officer is there the whole time the event is.
But I'm saying, who checks that? Does somebody
Mary and
physically
Natalie.
go there and check that on Saturday at 5:30? Is somebody physically going there, checking to see that there's no alcohol in it?
Auxiliaries are, yes.
Yeah.
They stop there and
We-
check.
We stopped, yep, we started having auxiliaries go, because what happens, again, with your non-resident rentals, is people were pushing the envelope. If our contract said after 75 people, you have to have a police officer even if you don't have alcohol, now we're trying to skirt around how many people we have, and we call at the last minute and say, oops, I'm
Right.
down to 50. Now we sneak in alcohol anyway, because we say, no, we're not gonna have alcohol at this baby shower, but we do.
I just wanted to
So
make
we
sure
did
that's
start,
checked.
yes, we did start having it checked.
Oh, yeah. We've
Absolutely.
had issues with it. It's like.
Because I know for a while there, I'm gonna say probably after everything started getting going again, there was a lot of police presence down there. There was a
Mhm.
lot of lights, a lot of ambulances, a lot of stuff going on down there left and right. I know the
With
guy who bought the house,
non-residents.
complained a lot, especially to me, there's a lot of stuff that's going on here. This stuff's gotta stop, and I know he talked to Brian a few times about it, saying that, I think that's why you guys have thought non-residents should not be allowed to use it, because it's getting abused.
Joe Check calls me, you can tell him, he calls me, he gets instant response.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I have, but have we had, of course, we've had a lot of problems. This village didn't know we don't know how to run an event center, and we shouldn't. I mean, we're a municipality, okay? Is there growing pains? You better believe it.
The way I look at it professionally.
But are we
is
addressing them? Yes.
Rec director should be separate from events coordinator. I mean,
Well, we had both
that's
before.
a true job, unfortunately.
We had both before, and when I became mayor, yeah, it wasn't effective.
Right.
It wasn't, you can have a lot of people, but if they ain't doing their job, doesn't mean anything. You can have 10 people and if only 3 are working, you don't need the other 7.
That's
So thank you.
Thank you.
So not only do we gotta get the right people, we gotta get people that are gonna work.
Yeah, yeah.
So. Anybody else have any comments related to the agenda? Or any other business?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, go ahead, John.
I just want to say, because I was the one that asked that we could have that rec meeting on November 16th, and it was the week before, so we could start to address some of these issues. We are going to be having a change in council coming the beginning of the year, too. So I wanted to put the items that I was thinking about on the rec department's sites. So this is stuff that they could start thinking about and considering, knowing that there was probably not going to be enough time to make all of these changes at the last minute before the end of the year. So I would still ask the rec department to go back to your agendas, things that we had talked about, and we will schedule a rec meeting, if possible, very early on in January, because some of these issues have to be addressed. But the rec committee is who should be addressing them, in my opinion, and then making the suggestion to the rest of council.
I gotta get that floor plan developed and get some business in here. That's what my job is. That's where my focus needs to be. Not that it isn't important for me to oversee the other departments, but if I have competent people, I'm fine. Because I'll tell you what, it's like anything, your house doesn't run if your expenses are exceeding your revenues. Your revenues get over your expenses, life's a lot easier. There's no doubt about it. And that's what makes our decisions tough. Just like you said, boy, we struggle even with the summer program, because we use part-time personnel, we use seasonal. But we're gonna keep improving it. And I'm glad Sunday was a good event. Yeah, we'll be electing, people can change their committees too. if they want. We'll have the election of the committees, council president, in our first meeting in January. So, and the swearing in will be January 1st for the new council members and the old council members who are re-elected. So, any questions related to the agenda or any other comments before we move on to our budget?
I just want to say, some of us aren't really old council members.
No, you're right. I'm old.
Intermediate versus veteran.
Okay, Angela, do you want to, any comments
Any-
from anybody
No
watching?
comments from anybody watching. Mylan Verzik had said earlier that the audio is good tonight, so thank you, and I'm assuming he means on that mic over there specifically, so I just thanked him for letting us
Good.
know.
How many residents do we have?
We've got, at any given moment, if you keep seeing my eyes go like this, it's because we're at 10, then we're at 6, then we're at 7, then we're, so it keeps jumping around. Currently 10, a minute ago it was 6. So I'm not sure if people keep getting kicked off or what's happening, but we'll
We
call
do
it 10
live
for now.
stream all our meetings. We've been trying to live stream. Sometimes we have a little difficulty, but we've been doing pretty good with them.
Okay, so council, I gave you notes this time. You're looking at a report 52 style of what's gonna be our draft so that we can discuss. We'll go line by line. Some things are very simple. We've talked about them many times and they're self-explanatory, so we'll scooch through those faster. What I didn't tell you when I emailed this out today and put it in your boxes, that 2021 actual column is still October's figures. I'm not quite done with November yet because I wanted to stop and get this done. So, if everybody's okay, I'll start on the revenues. Okay, municipal income tax, we typically get electric tax, and it varies each year what we're gonna get. So if you see in 20 actual, what you're looking at, we got only $3,200 roughly, but in 21 we got 30,000. So I budgeted conservatively, I budgeted to get 30,000 because we had gotten a lot in 19, I believe it was. Well, this is our off year again, so I think we just got a disbursement in November for probably about 3,200 if that. So I'm gonna go really low next year and go only 10,000 on that. If we happen to get more, I don't know the rhyme or reason, I gotta look into that. Why one year is it just a few thousand and the next year it's tens of thousands. But that's kinda how it's been on alternate years. We're doing pretty good on our withholding taxes and individual and net profit. So I kinda kept those budget line, I've kept the budget line for withholding the same as 2021 with an anticipated $2.95 million in withholding taxes. And individual, I did bump up just not even $10,000 because thanks be to God, even with COVID, we still we're coming out ahead of where our budget amount was for that. And we had budgeted $250 this year, we're already over by the end of October. So $260 is gonna be what I'm anticipating in revenue for that line. And I kept net profit the same. If we end up lagging anywhere by just a little bit this year, it's gonna be a net profit again, and that's very typical of every year, simply because people do a million extensions on their net profit return, and we do have a lot of businesses that end up having a loss. What I've got for local government distribution, I've mentioned before that our camera revenue offsets that now, so where in the past we had gotten like close to 30,000 in 2020, they started in 2021, and to offset that greatly by, if you're receiving camera revenue, I have to do a report each year, once or twice a year, to let them know where we are at with our camera revenue, and then you get less in your local government distribution. So I took that down from the budget of 16.5 that we had this year to 2,500 for next year. And I apologize, I got a scratchy voice like several times a year when it's like stressy season, I get lose my voice. All right, liquor, beer, permit fees, same thing. I left that at 1,000. I've got a little bit to put in there for November, but it's not going to go any higher than that. Property tax allocation. This might be my answer actually. So if we look through line 1,231 down through 1,390 with our special assessments, I was off a little bit, and I was questioning why we budgeted 585, and I was like, why am I low? Now that I'm looking at it, I might need to move that. I might have put some things in the regular allocation line that need to go in the other, and that would square us up on those assessments. I thought we were getting shorted this year for some reason. So I'm gonna just double check that, and I will move that. I'm keeping that at the same amount, 585,000 in revenues expected for next year on special assessments. Grants or aid, keeping it 5,000. Same for concession stand, pop machine, concession stand Parker program, and then entry fees for Parker program. We allowed a lot more in this year than we were allowed for 2020. We had to be conservative in the COVID year and have less Parkers. So I upped that to 25,000 based on us taking in close to that much this year. If we decide we're gonna raise fees, then we would have more revenue. That's at our current fees. We don't budget anything for baseball. What we've had to do the past couple of years, we don't have enough kids for our own team. So if they do pay us, usually I'm paying it back out to Cuyahoga Heights or Valley View or whoever's taking those kids. So no budget line for that. And we don't have anything typically in cultural and rec programs either. For recreation trips, I left that at $1,500 to come in. Yoga, I didn't budget anything. We've been getting approximately $60 to $90, let's call it every month to other month on yoga. So depending on if she has to cancel in between or not. So I don't even have anything booked in there, but actually the reason I don't have it booked in there is if you look down below at special events, I have 134 in there. That's actually our yoga amount. So it's been getting put in that line item, which I also left that one at 1,000. Transportation, I left at 3,500 for revenue. That's about where we're gonna end this year. Senior services, which would be senior lunches and then any other senior events we might hold. I upped our revenue to 5,000. We've had a lot more people attending our senior lunches this year. So we're back up close to 5,000 already as of the end of October in revenues for who's coming to lunch. Other charges for services, that is something kind of random, so there's no budget line for that. Charges for dispatch, I do have, we received our final check from Oakwood. So that goes up 2% annually per our contract. So that is the amount for next year, $386,459.64. Police services, that's when our police go out and sit at the businesses. Let me take this down, it's easier. Sit at the businesses, if the businesses have something going on and they need the police to go sit there. So that's what that police services line is. And we've been able, so they pay to use our cruisers basically. The officers get paid directly by the businesses, but they pay to us to use our cruisers and we receive that check.
Angela?
So, yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but before we get further, so the dispatch service is paid for? It's
Yes, we're
just
all
that
square.
this-
I gotta book it in. It was in November.
Okay, so that's just because.
We are
these
all square
were
with fire and
October's.
dispatch for this year.
Okay, so these
Yep.
were October's numbers.
Yep,
Okay.
you got it. We're
Thank
square on all of that. Advertising, I left at 4,800. That's money that we get from UH for advertising in our journal. So God willing, they're gonna continue that next year. They pay $400 a month for their ad. And then we get into building departments. I left it at 2,000. We're only slightly over that right now. Certain parts of the building department have been slower than others this year. So like, for example, we've got less going on in residential permits than we did in commercial permits. But, so I didn't touch their revenue much. I left that there. Charges for services in the finance department, that is typically, the main charge for that is for the JED. We get our 3% for administering the JED, 3 or 6, something like that. So when money comes in for the JED, we do the figures, we split it 50-50 to us and Sagamore, but we also then, we take 6% off the top of that, so. For our administrative fees, yes. Now banquet hall rental, I have a note for all of you, that this would be dependent on the rec committee recommendations. We had budgeted 30,000 for this year to be conservative. We've already taken in, as of the end of October, 35,000 and change. I left it at 30. And we'll probably plan for that. That'll be a conservative number, depending. And then if you decide you're going to rent to outsiders again, then we may end up with more revenue on that line or not. I don't know. Community room rental, I left at 1,000. We've only, rented that out for a total of about 300 to 400 for this year so far. Baseball field rental, we did have some rentals come in, but they ended up actually getting canceled. So I put nothing in for that line. We don't typically budget for it. It's a bonus if we get it. And then other charges in there, in the 590, I just left at 2,000. I gotta look at what that is. I didn't make myself a note I wanted to give you guys a pretty good explanation of what everything is on here. So moving on to some of the charges within the departments. So we're gonna go, structure plan review, court costs. Court costs, we are getting back on track after COVID a little bit. So I'm gonna leave that at 65,000. Auxiliary, which is our cost for them to be at court, I'm gonna leave it 5,000. We're hovering right around that amount. Court fines, same thing. I'm gonna leave it at 100,000. I bumped up fines and forfeitures to 5,500, because we're already past that this year. Amen, we're up to 5,700, so we're over budget, so I'm just gonna leave it at 55. I like to go conservative, as if you haven't been able to tell. Traffic camera revenue, by the end of October, was 416. We had budgeted 300,000, and a lot of people will ask, you know, about using that line. Yes, we get a lot, but I always go conservative because we could get it shut down at any moment. If laws change and things, you know, go opposite of how we like them. So I'm leaving that at 300,000 as anticipated revenue. Permits. We budgeted 10,000 last year, and we're gonna end the year a little, you know, quite a bit under that. So I'm only budgeting 8,000 for permits for next year. If we get more, that'll be fantastic. We pay 1% to the state on residential permits, so that would be 80. On commercial permits, I'm gonna budget, so go 2 lines down, I'm gonna leave that at 3,000. That's about what we've had so far this year, and then the 3% on that would be $90 that we pay to the state. Zoning, we've done pretty well on zoning, so I'm gonna up that and anticipate $7,000 next year over the 5 we did for this year, 5 we budgeted. And then zoning in the commercial end, we had budgeted only 2,500, we were at about 65 at the end of October, so I'm gonna put that at 5,000. Any questions for that page? All right, moving on to cable franchise fees. We should come in right about that 30,000 mark by the end of the year, because I did get another check in November that has to get booked, so I'm keeping that exactly the same. This other license and permits, we don't really budget for. General license and permits, this might also be, I'm trying to remember what this is. I'm gonna look and I'll give you an exact of what goes in that line, because the amounts seem very exact. We budgeted 17,000, and at the end of October, we were at 14,550, so I'm thinking that, I kept it at 17, we're gonna be hovering around the same. Interest transferred to capital, I left that at 5,000. I haven't booked in our stuff that had to do with our notes and everything, so, and then also like interest from our investments, I left that at 5. We skipped miscellaneous, we skipped prisoner housing. Actually, I'm gonna need to throw something in prisoner housing, but that says other, and so we must have another line item for it, or I must be accidentally putting it into pro services. I'll double check that. We do pay Bedford for our prisoners if they have to stay overnight, so we do have money going out this year for that, and I'll double check where I stuck it and see. If anything, I would be moving it out of one line and up to here, so it wouldn't make a change, really. It would net out. Printing and advertising for our directory. We didn't do a directory this year, but we've gotten some money in toward it, probably from when we did print it, so that there's no budget line for that, no money going into that. Vehicle release, which is our tow fees. We've done fantastic. We budgeted 5,000. We are, as of November, we're gonna be over that, so I put that up to 5,500. Garage sale, we don't put anything in to our line for revenue. Senior services, same
We
thing.
like to charge everybody a
Yeah.
little bit.
We do, we charge them. we
No,
do
I
charge
know
them.
for the thing, but I'm still our profit.
This particular senior services line, we don't budget anything for there. And then our transfers in and advances on those 2 lines, also nothing gets budgeted. Sale of fixed assets also always gets a 0, because we don't know in any given year, you know, it may be that a police car moves out of the fleet. It's not always anticipated though ahead of time. So if they can get a new car and then they can move an older one out because it's, you know, not working, then we put that on Gov Deals, and so that's kind of another thing that's like just a little bonus if we can sell those. And then the last line we had on there that I added last year was we needed to have a separate line for money that came in from CARES Act funds, which was the during COVID money that came. 2,000 was what was remaining for that we had left over this year that we spent early on for that. That's a 0 because there's not gonna be any more money in that budget line. It won't be used again, probably. Any questions before we move down to the SCMR? All right, so SCMR fund, gasoline tax. I had one in his box.
He just got the expenditures, he's looking on the internet.
Oh, he should have behind that, tell him to check for the revenue. It should be in there. If I may have stapled it backwards, sorry.
I got it.
Okay.
Look at this.
Or he got 2. I was fighting with the copier this afternoon, so he may have gotten 2, sorry. I can give him another copy, sorry. Pause. Pause. I don't know if I've got one here. He's good. Go ahead. We'll be through these quickly. All right, gasoline tax that comes from the state. We budgeted 150. We're gonna pretty much pull in right around that amount, so I budgeted 150 again. License tax coming from the county. We budgeted 75. We'll be right around that, so I budgeted the same. Nothing going in the grants or aid non-federal or state line, and nothing going in that other particular miscellaneous, non-operating line. Transfers into the general fund, these are subject to change. I gotta just do a little bit more, recognizance on my end and see if I wanna go with exactly these amounts, but transfers in are gonna also then be transfers out. So these are gonna be a wash if I move them. Whatever I change it to on here is gonna be equal on the, expense side. So I have 500,000 right now. This year, we do our transfers in December, so I had 570. And we kind of like leave that, like I may not need to transfer 570 into the general fund. I may not need that whole amount, but that's what we had budgeted and what we voted on last year to do. So I'm gonna put 500,000 for next year. And then advances in, no budget, and sale of fixed assets for that department, no budget. Now, state highway gasoline tax, so when the gas tax comes in, a portion of it gets split up between the 2011 and the 2021 accounts. We budgeted 11,250 for this year. We're over that. I budgeted 12,000 for next year. So that's a 7.5% when the tax comes in. 7.5% goes into the state highway fund. License tax, same thing. 7.5% gets split between the SCMR and the state highway. I'm budgeting 6,000 again because that's where we're going to land this year. And then we skip their interest and advances in, nothing there. Law enforcement trust fund, court fines. We had budgeted 500. We're gonna probably come close to that once I put November's numbers in December, so I budgeted 500 again. Other fines and forfeitures, I'm gonna leave it at 1,000. I don't know that we'll hit it for this year, but again, I'm not gonna go any higher than that. So in law enforcement trust, that's all we do there. Sale of fixed assets out of that particular account happens very rare, so there's nothing in that budget line. And then motor vehicle, I need to check to see if there's anything that came in this year on the property taxes that maybe I booked in the wrong line, or if we didn't get anything, because that's typically where this motor vehicle tax would come from, and we have zeros in there. So that's why there's zeros in there. Any questions before we go on to the next page? All right, police pensions, coming from the property taxes, we had budgeted 87,000. Right now, we're in at just about 80, so I'm gonna leave it at 87 again. Property tax rollbacks, we don't budget for, that's another bonus. We had 36,000 come in this year. They're not necessarily guaranteed every year. Other shared taxes and permits, zero budgeted there. And then our transfers in for this particular pension line, I have at 75,000 again, same as this year. Water meter repair fund, we've got tap fees we don't necessarily budget for. Those happen just a couple times a year maybe if someone's doing a brand new home. But our transfer in for that, I just bumped up from 11,785 to 12,000 because each year that amount seems to go up a little bit. So I just bumped that. And then again, we're at extraordinary items. So there was CARES Act distributions. I put that on the wrong line for you. Oh, no, that's correct. Okay, so what I'm using this line for right now, what you see in there is that 118,840.08. I'm using that same line right now, and I'm probably gonna create a different one to put it in just based on the fact that I named it CARES Act. But those ARPA funds that came in directly from the federal government, that's what's gonna come in next year. We got it this year, it's gonna come in next year, same distribution amount. So that's why the 118's in there. So if anything, you'll just see a brand new 2902 line item, and I'll put it in there. I had to create one for the money we received for the sale of the Smith & Obie property at the corner. Those funds remain with the CIC, and so you're not gonna see anything again next year unless we sell another piece of property that's part of our CIC. Mayor's computer court fines, I left at 4,500 for next year. And then we've got a couple of miscellaneous things under special bond retirement. So when we get to our sale of notes next year, we just took $2,140,000 out. My plan is gonna be to pay down $140,000 when we do redo next year's notes. So that would mean that our sale of notes is gonna net us $2 million if we pay down that amount, okay? If we're in a generous position and we're able to pay more, we'll pay more, and we'll take less out on a renewal of the note when we refund it. And then the transfer in on the interest on that, 50,000. Sewer improvement fund under our capital revenues. Nothing coming in there. And what I currently have in that line item for this year was actually change order number 1 for Dunham, if you remember, was sewer work that needed to be done on Maple's side. So I kind of parked that revenue in there, but it's actually gonna get moved as I book all the rest of the Dunham income and net out the project in the month of November, before I close November. Grants or aid we sometimes get from UH, just grant money as well, which kind of goes toward, that kind of goes toward the police services as well. So if we do sometimes have an officer that will show some overtime because they're going to do a service at UH. This money comes back in and kind of nets out that. There's nothing that gets actually budgeted for that. I had the Dunham money sitting in that account for some reason, that 2.8, if you look at what we budgeted last year, but that's gonna all get moved over to the proper account within here. Court fine safety vehicle, we budgeted 20,000, we're gonna land at about the same place, so I budgeted the same. And then other miscellaneous non-operating, this is technically where I'm probably gonna move, the money for Dunham that I had up above. I'm budgeting next year based on our road program, and if we were to pull off everything that's on there and we get that OPWC loan portion to go with our grant, and all the money we would have coming in from the sewer district, the county, all of those things to contribute to our road program is gonna put us at $952,300 of reimbursements, so to speak, or contributions to our projects. And then transfers in, which would be interest from other funds, 400,000. I bumped that up to 4. Again, that might change, but it's gonna change on the expense side too. Veterans Memorial, I had accidentally somehow grabbed this account and booked a Maple payment in here. So that's what you saw this year. So nothing gets budgeted in here. We don't really use this for much, and that 80,000 belongs in to the project for Dunham as well. I was having very fat fingers and putting the Dunham money all right next to each other, but not in the line I wanted it. Any questions before the last page of revenues?
Yes, Angela, I do.
Yep.
So I have a question on the grant and aid,
Yes.
line. You mentioned the
Yes.
$2,853,000.
That was reimbursement that we would be getting.
Yeah, but it was budgeted for 2021 budget. And you showed the actual at 15, and you said it was going to show up somewhere else. Where?
I don't have, it came in November, so November's not on here yet.
Okay.
You just, check was deposited in from the county
Okay.
and all of our other Maple, and they might have one more outstanding check to me. But that's all, there was a lot that came in November, so you don't see it on here yet. So when I finish November 52 for you guys by the end of this week, then you'll see all that net out.
Okay.
And I'll move everything to its correct accounts.
And then one more question.
Yeah.
Is on the line item 4901-892, miscellaneous. And you mentioned a variety of places where those funds. Could we, you could break
It's
that
on your road program, but I can give you a breakdown of the budget for it too. So if you look at that 2022 road program.
The
Joe-
215, I mean, where the 215 comes from.
Oh, that 215, that's coming from Maple, most of it, that was Maple reimbursement to us. But I can detail that out for you,
Okay.
what's actually in there for this year.
Yeah,
You
'cause
need-
you
yeah.
told a lot of different
Yeah.
sources.
Right.
Yep, you got it. In the past, we were not properly booking our stuff, so whenever we did road projects, we were doing our expenditures, and then we would get a check back from the county or whoever, and we were going back in and netting it literally against the expense, right? So I was receiving it against the expense. And then the audit, I learned in the last audit, that's not the proper way to do that. You need to list all your expenses out and then also list what's gonna come in like this. So that's why we've started using that line item for, things we know are gonna get reimbursed.
And finally, I could use a hard copy as well. I just have an expenditure statement I'm following.
Oh, I'm sorry,
following
I was
electronic.
fighting with the copier, so I'll get you all revenues if you ended up with 2 expenditures. I thought that I had it all going after Lisa was my,
Are you okay right now?
Yeah, I'm good right now.
okay. Yeah, just remind me, as soon as we're done with the meeting, I'll print that part for you. I fought and it gave me great copies out of 5 copies out of 9, and then all of a sudden it was eating paper and spitting out extra of the expenditures. All right, last.
I found
yeah.
that out this
Yes, if you
afternoon,
if you
too.
tell the copy to staple, if you tell the copier to staple, forget it, it all goes haywire. And I made that mistake today. All right, so then any other questions on revenue before we move on? Oh, I'm sorry, I do got one more page. We randomly ended up with more on this page 4. All right, so Mayor's Court. We don't budget anything in that line item for 9902. That's money basically that kind of moves over each year from her checking account into ours. Okay, so nothing else in theirs. Second party service, which could be for, you'll see in here we've got snow plowing and the lawn care and all of that, and then people donating to the benevolent fund. We don't typically budget for these types of things. The lawn care and the snow plowing are kind of an in and out. We bring the money in, we pay it out. It's a net. And then, benevolent fund, we obviously can't guarantee how much someone's going to donate at any given time. So that's what that stuff is. And then the JED is the last thing. I'm keeping our budget at $750. That's what we had this last year. That's about where we're going to end the year. We might be a little bit ahead of that. But, that's the budget I'm turning into the JED as well for our JED meetings, 750,000 anticipated for next year. And then, like I said, that will get split. We get that much in, we take our administrative fee, and we split the difference between Zach and Warren. So roughly 325 to both of us, maybe 320 to Zach and Warren. Any questions? All right, get a drink of water real quick, and then we'll move on to expenses.
Yes, I do have one more question.
Yep,
You mentioned the CIC.
Yes.
That revenue from the sale of the property
correct.
stays with CIC.
Stays with CIC, so I'd have to look at, and since I've been here, we haven't had any other CIC activity really where we would spend out the money. But we don't have to, we're not obligated to have a separate bank account for it, but it's gotta stay in its own line item. So, yeah.
Go ahead, Randy. Yeah.
Well, so the question is, should there be an
We could probably do a separate bank account and like move it out, so to speak, before the year end. And
or
put
an
something else,
asterisk by there? I mean, should that be deducted?
It won't be,
from
I
the-
just don't have, like, we're not gonna get revenue for it again next year, so to speak,
Which is
so.
something we can't use it.
We can't use it except for CIC specific things, which I could ask Tom Jordan what those would even potentially be.
Right.
Right, so,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm just saying, so for me to get a better picture.
Yeah,
after the
absolutely.
year,
And
that's-
one-
That's 100, whatever.
One of the
less
things
than-
that it
Let
could
me find
potentially
out.
be used for, if I go back to Tom, is I could probably go offset, like if, let's say we would have needed Sugar and Valley Engineering to do stuff up at that corner. I can now go back and I can net some of that out against any expenses we might have had on that. So that number, you know what I'm saying, we're gonna use up some of that and eat it up by netting it to something we paid as an expense. It won't all go away though, but I'll ask him, okay, when can we use this money? What's it gonna go for, if anything? Because the CIC was inactive for a little bit of time there too. The auditors were even asking, like, are you doing stuff with the CIC still or not? So yeah, we keep it going because of these types of things. If we've got other property we're gonna sell, if we ever get Crick Road all cleaned up with the EPA and maybe we can sell that, or, yeah, so, yep, but I can detail
We're
that
getting
out.
closer on that front.
Yes, we are.
Angela, I believe that CIC money too it's like, as you said, only stays with this, CIC, whatever we've sold to it, but it can be used towards the purchase of other properties or
Yes, that too.
improvements
It
of
could.
other properties.
Yes,
That
absolutely.
would go back into the CIC.
Yep, yes, it can, it can. All right, so first thing we hit on expense line is gonna be police salaries. So every salary line for every department in here is inclusive of the 1.75 COLA increase. Police had that in their collective bargaining agreement last year. We had agreed at our last meeting that, yes, we wanted to award that to the employees as well. So that is what everything will be based on as far as the increases you see in salary lines. Overtime for police, I left at 10,000. I mean, so you could, police salaries will come out to 930,715 roughly next year. I left overtime at 10,000. They don't, what you are seeing in police overtime line there, a tiny, tiny bit of it would be if part-timers had some actual overtime. But again, like I said, let's say one officer is, going out to UH to work. Some of that gets offset with that 15,000 that's on the revenue line for police services. Dispatch salaries, are gonna go up again just because of the increase, 195,843, and that's for full-time salaries. Dispatch overtime, you'll notice we had budgeted 5,000 this year. We were over quite a bit. I'm keeping it at 6. We had, our dispatcher out for medical this year, and so, we had some coverage issues that needed to take place. So that's where a lot of that overtime came from. That was way over. So we should be back on track. The dispatchers had signed a little bit of an MOU, if you will, to 12-hour days, so that they kind of mirror the police now, and that was to help mitigate the overtime. So that will be a different story in the future. God willing, nobody's got any medical issues, and everybody still stays healthy.
Right.
Police salaries part-time, that's gonna go to $190,007. Auxiliary part-time, I'm leaving at 17,000. We're not gonna use that much this year, but I'm gonna leave it there anyway. You never know if we start sending more auxiliaries out, if we rent the department event center out to non-residents and choose to put someone out there, that may, we may need that money. Dispatch salaries part-time, 147,537.50. And so I'm gonna give a little bit, just background on what I'm budgeting, actually, yeah, all right. I didn't mention in the police, what I've done in the police lines is I've left this at 12 full-time officers, and I've left it at 4 part-time officers for Stan. You know, when he came in, he asked about making sure he could have at least one more part-timer. He will, so we just recently hired Kyle Boone when Brianna Molnar left. John Letner is leaving us at the end of this year to go to another city. So then we will be down to 3, so then that will still allow him to get the 4th in, and should anyone else leave, we are covered for 4 part-timers at all time. And there'll be a little bit of wiggle room if someone else does need to get moved up at some point as well, but that still allows him to have those 4 part-timers at all times. And I have talked to Stan about that to make sure we were on the same page about that. So, you know, knowing he's losing Letner, we're already gonna be down to 3, and then he still can replace 1. Okay, we went over auxiliary. Same thing for dispatch, just so you know when you're looking at these salaries. We had 4 full-time dispatchers. 1 did just recently leave to take another position somewhere else. So I left their salaries anticipating hiring 1 more full-time, or maybe putting a part-timer up to full-time. And then I think I had them in at 10 part-timers. So just, you know, that's where the numbers come from when we're looking at, you know, how we get to those figures for dispatch. Longevity. That is based on officer status and how long they have worked here in the village. And so I underestimated this last year because I kind of kept the budget around the 17,000. But really when we got into the beginning of the year, we realized a couple people had to get bumped up. It should have been 21,000. Talking to Katie, who's still handling some payroll for me right now, that might go up 2,000. So I'm going to put it at 23 for now. If we figure out there's not going to be any increases in anyone's longevity pay per month, I'll let you know. Currently, right now, that's at $1,750 a month for all of the officers that are entitled to longevity.
And that was part of the collective
Yep.
bargaining agreement, as
Yep,
everybody knows.
absolutely. You're gonna see a police uniform line up here. That is for brand new hires who don't get their own allowance, and for incidentals, sometimes equipment's, little, you know, your belt holsters breaking, things like that. So that's not the general uniform line, that's just basically new hires and incidentals. Weapons allowance per the CBA is $450 per officer. That's full-time and part-time, so that's at $7,200 based on 16 officers total. Uniform fee for dispatch, that they get $320 for a part-timer and $500 per full-timer, so that's where the $5,200 comes in. And I did, like, since I based that off of having 10 part-timers and 4 full-timers, that did go up a little bit from last year. We may not have that many people, but just in case we need to hire along the way. All right, so we skip down to OPERS. We pay as an employer 14% of the salaries. So the OPERS for police is really only on part-timers and auxiliary because the full-timers pay into Ohio Police and Fire Pension. That's gonna be $26,600. OPERS for dispatch will be $48,913. Medicare, we don't pay Social Security here, so the portion we pay for Medicare is 0.0145. And so for the police, that's $16,496. For dispatch, it's $5,066. Hospitalization, I bumped up just a bit because I do anticipate the rates going up. We were at $218 this year. I got to put in, you know, a couple months worth of payments still out to Anthem, and so I put us at $220, anticipating an increase in healthcare costs. Same for dispatch. I bumped them up from $32.4 to $35 in the budget for this next year. Life insurance, we pay. You know, for each employee, police get a $100,000 policy, we all get $50,000, and that's roughly $31 a month for police and almost $16 per other employee. So I just anticipated a slight increase at $32 per police officer, full-time police officer, and $16 per regular full-time employee. So that will be for police $5,376, for dispatch $768 a year. And then workers' comp, I kind of put up it to $9,500, you know, with all the overtime hours and things that were taken into consideration this year for dispatch. Of course, that stuff's going to go up a little bit. And for police, dispatch is going to come in at $3,500. And that's it for the section that has to do with salaries in the police department. Any questions before we move on to their incidental lines?
Angela,
Yes.
the sick leave for dispatch,
Yes.
how many, because I understand the overtime for dispatch was due to sick leave, and that was almost 3 times more than we had anticipated having to pay out. That's, how many people did we have out of dispatch on sick leave?
we had our dispatch supervisor out, so we had to have our full-timers come and spend some more time along with some of our, newer part-timers.
Okay.
So, yes.
So that
Because you
was
need
the
to
main
kind of
thing.
have, to have a little bit of equal coverage, and so then, and at the same time, we also had another employee that was out ill for part of the time, so it was kind of a little bit of a snowball effect there at the time it happened.
Okay. Yeah, because it's just over a $20,000 hit between those two lines.
And I'm just looking at sick leave, like I don't even have their, yes, correct, but the sick leave for dispatch, you notice we don't budget for anybody's sick leave because it's already part of their benefit package. So it's on here for you to see what's booked in and what's been taken for the year, but that's already technically part of their benefit package anyway. It's not an extra cost to us, that's why we don't include it in the budget line as an expense. It's already in there. We just show what we don't budget for it any different. It's basically, we break it out once we do the payroll report at the end of each month. But when I budget into their, 195,000, so to speak, on full-time and whatnot on part-time, that's already really a part of that. This is just showing myself and whoever's gonna do payroll or who's doing payroll, hey, here's how much they've actually used. All right, so any other questions on that section before we move on? Okay. Travel and transportation for police, I didn't put anything in there, although I do know that we have one particular officer that is gonna go to some training in Columbus. I think I've already included that in her training line. So the lodging and meals, you'll notice, went up $2,000. And then we come to uniforms and clothing. So as you know, with the CBA this past year, we upped up the full-time officers to $1,200 and the part-timers to $720. So I based that budget off of the 4 part-time and 12 full-time employees, so that uniform line becomes $17,280. Telephones and pagers, $3,000. Actually just decreased that because we've switched services from Verizon to AT&T, first responders or FirstNet service a couple years ago, and so that's dropped. Printing and reproduction, we own our printers, but they do a lot of color copying over there, and so we do pay monthly for our printing services. And so I increased theirs by $500 because they did have a lot more going on with, printing things for court cases and things like that this year. Training services, I gave them an extra $5. Again, at any given time, if we don't have enough training going on here for our officers to attend, or if there's something more specialized that they need to go out for, then it's important that, we make sure our officers are trained, obviously. So I did increase that because we did spend almost 10 this year. Now, some of the other things included in that line, when we host here, we do also get, we go get usually some, donuts and refreshments and coffee and things like that. So a little bit of that is part of that 9,000 you see for this year because we hosted, and so we did provide some other things like that.
And that training is very important, as
Yep.
our safety chairman being involved with it and stuff too, especially with, keeping our police educated in the latest in de-escalation and different things, and so that money's well spent there too.
Professional and technical services, I gave a little breakdown on my notes of what is generally in this line item, and that is our LexisNexis for the police, signal service when we've got to have work done, North Coast 2A radio, and a couple other miscellaneous vendors. I only had $8,000 in their budget last year, and we had to pay a decent amount more this year for certain things, and obviously we just reprogrammed radios, things like that. So I upped that to $20,000 just based on what we're going to spend this year. Dues and fees, if you remember this last year, we budgeted because we were going to potentially owe $25,000 to SEAL. We had several years in a row where we got lucky and SEAL had grants come in and the cities didn't have to pay. We did pay out, I want to say, either 10 or 15 in the beginning of this year. And so I did ask Stan, do you think we're going to owe next year? He said we might. So I left that at $25,000. And then other miscellaneous dues for their organizations that they belong to as sergeants and officers and chiefs of police. Machinery and equipment, I left that at 0. That's kind of a miscellaneous line. I can look and even see what that $2,900 was, but generally speaking, there's nothing that goes into that for them. Contractual services, I'm going to leave at $7,000 for them. That's probably leads I have in there, I believe. Office supplies and materials, I left them at $3,000. They're not spending as much this year, but that's not to say they're not going to need more printer ink or something next year. And so then operating supplies, this is where we do like general supplies and ammunition for them. So I upped it just a little bit because we are over budget as of the end of October already. I do check in, Officer Gervasi does a lot of this purchasing, I do check in with him periodically on what's left in his line, but if ammo, ammo's been hard to get, and if we can find it at a deal and get it in quantity, we certainly want to make sure we have enough of that for training purposes at the range and for, just being on general duty. So I upped that to 18,000, and knowing costs might go up for some things. Fuel, I left at 30,000 for the police vehicles. Repair of machinery and equipment for them, I just upped it to 5,000. Really, I'm trying to think equipment-wise of what they have that we would have repaired. Some of that could be things that go into the police cars. Motor vehicles, we had a big increase all across the board this year of motor vehicle repairs. So I bumped them up from 15 to 20, just knowing that not only are some of the vehicles aging, but we've actually had newer vehicles in the shop as well. So I just increased that because we were already over 17,000 at the end of October. Supplies and materials for the prisoners. We do have to go pick up their medications from time to time and or feed them. So I took that down to 2,500. We haven't spent as much this year because our prisoners are now housed in Bedford overnight and they're only with us a short time. We're not doing as much of that as we used to. And then I put 10,000 in equipment because if you remember, Stan mentioned we need a new server and dispatch. So I listed that under equipment. That's a necessity, so I made sure I got that in there. Now same thing, computer and supplies. They were at 25 and I left it. We're gonna need those PCs in the booking area, and part of that's gonna be $3,000 anyway. So I didn't change their line item despite the fact that they didn't use all of it. Any questions on that page? All right, utilities, kind of simple. Electricity, I left the same. We're gonna roll in right around 75 grand. Natural gas, I took down to 18. We've been fortunate now. Of course, watch me.
Wait a minute, you missed one.
Did I miss one? I'm sorry.
Yeah, other security or persons and property.
Hold on. Let me find a page two. I'm on single pages and I gave you guys double, so bear with me. I got an extra something in here somewhere.
Mine might not be.
Here, give me yours for a second. I'm not gonna lie, I skipped to 3. Actually, I skipped all my double sides, didn't I? Oh,
Angela,
that one,
that's
thank you.
correct.
That one did not double side, that's why. Okay. So here we are, other securities of person and property. This is where we've got fire contract. So fire contract also gonna be a 2% increase. That's a reciprocal thing we have in our contracts with them. So each year that goes up. So we're gonna pay $603,290 next year for the fire contract. Contractual services, $3,500, that's gonna stay the same. And then we've got Board of Health, that's a one-time payment we do each year, and that also increases a little bit each year. This year we stayed the same as 2020, but it could go up, so I just bumped it up to 13 even, just in case. Rec and community life. Salaries, based on the increase, this would be for the two part-time staff, $63,085. I did include an overtime line this year because we do anticipate overtime during Parker season typically. Carlene would get some when she was working it, and we do anticipate overtime from both employees in that department during high event season. So, we just had tree lighting, we're gonna have Santa delivery. A lot of overtime goes into those weeks for planning events. So not a lot over the course of the year, but because they are part-time, they are entitled to some overtime when they work past their hours in a given week. And so I put 2,000 in there. Seasonal salaries would be for our Parker counselors, and I left that at 36,000. We came in this year, we had budgeted 36, came in just about 25,000. And so again, if we end up being able to take more Parkers, we may need some more counselors next year. Transportation salary was at 15. We're gonna land right about that same area. I left it at 15. So that's, for right now, that's where that's at. And then their PERS, same thing, we pay 14%, so the total of all those salaries for PERS is gonna be $16,251. Medicare, same thing, their Medicare portion on that that we're gonna pay is $1,683. Workers' comp, I left at 1,000. Travel and transportation, I left at 200. We didn't use anything this year, but just in case Natalie and or whoever the assistant would be want to go to some training, because there is training for the rec departments typically in a year that's non-COVID. And I know in the past it's been like at Kalahari or somewhere nearby, but at a hotel, so they may have gas costs for that. Lodging and meals, same thing. I left $250 in the budget for that. And that can cover, you say lodging and meals, that could be for training, but there could also be meals if somebody's having a staff meeting with their employees and they choose to do lunch. Pro and technical services for them, I left at 2,000. And then I can tell you what's in that line if you want to know too. I printed those later, so I can let you know if I didn't make notes in here. Trips, we budgeted 3,000. This year, we really didn't have anything in there because the trip to Hartville that was taken, I do have money I can put in here, but it was basically $2 per person for transportation. And so I think she gave it to me and I booked it into senior services. Special events, I left at 13,000. We've been doing pretty good with that amount, not going over, and we've been able to offer some nice things. So I left that the same. I didn't take anything away. So nobody got anything taken away in this budget. Let me make that clear. Other than incidentals as operating supplies or office supplies, where I was able to do things like that. Garage sale, I left at 1,200. That we put things in the paper for garage sales, so we've got an expense there. Parker program, I left at 10,000. And that's just expenses for things that we buy, like snacks for them and supplies for them, for crafts and things like that. Baseball, I took that down to 1,000 because again, we haven't had much coming in. We haven't had people, since we weren't doing baseball, we haven't been spending on baseball, but in case we need to do anything, for the program, I just left it at 1,000. Dues and fees, 250. There's a recreation, organization that they can be a part of that would have a cost to it. Contractual services, that 20,000 is for the Lake Club, so I left that in there at 20,000. Operating supplies and materials, I bumped up to 2,500 a little bit based on this year. They were at 2,000 this last year. Concessions, I brought down to 1,000. We weren't doing, because there's not baseball happening up there and adult leagues playing as often, we were not really running concessions, so I took that down to 1,000. Senior services, I took that up to 6,500, or left it at 6,500, I should say, because that's about where we will land on our expenses for doing senior lunch and things like that for the seniors. Fuel, I took down to 3,500. We're going to come in way under that 4,000 budget, so I took that down a little bit. Operating supplies for the park, I did not budget anything for it last year, but we do sometimes need our grass seed, our infield mix, our mulch, something like that, so I put 500 in there. Buildings and land, I bumped up about 4,000 as well. We've got a little more in there this year because we did do that fence next to the event center. So, just some other little, beautification things we did this year. I just gave a little bit of a bump on that line for next year. So it's not coming out of Rob's main line. And then also, same thing with their repairs for vehicles. I upped them to 5,000 from 2,500 because, again, they needed a lot more repairs this year than anticipated. Any questions in that department?
Yeah, so there is no community day.
No,
in the budget.
I did not put community day in the budget.
Okay, I don't know if everybody still feels the same way about it.
I think you used to budget 20,000 roughly for it, I think. 25, that's what I was gonna say. It's been a minute, because you did that since I've been here. I came in 17, and that might have been your last community day that you had.
I think it's probably a good idea not to. We're still kind of in a, with COVID and knowing how things are. The other thing I just wanted to say, just with it, and we can always talk about, because maybe and it could be an event, we could just put maybe just fireworks.
Something.
Even,
or if we're doing well closer to that time.
At the summer, just come and see fireworks and not have, the rest. I think that's something people have really missed in our communities, having the once a year. The fireworks are kind of nice.
Sure.
You just come in the evening and that would be a very low expense.
And sometimes you can
Just-
get
I'm just throwing
donations
it out
toward,
there.
sometimes we can get
Yeah, well, that
organization
might
donations
happen
toward
too.
that, yeah.
But just throwing it out there.
Anything else on the rec department?
Yeah, I have a question. So without Community Day being a line item, the events that have happened over the last couple of years, are they budgeted in the special events?
Yes,
line?
so when
That-
we do like tree lighting or we do hayride, that's all comes out of special events.
Okay.
Yep, you got it.
Concerts.
Concerts,
Yep,
okay.
all of that falls under special events. You got it. Any others? Okay. Building department, this is the salary portion that Rob gets for being certified to do inspections, and that stays the same each year, 14,000, so I left that along with its PERS and Medicare components. Those are what they are at the percentages we pay. It's just a breakout of what he gets for being certified. Okay, building department, that workers' comp goes along with that. Their pro and technical services, I kept at 20,000. By the time I add some expenses in there, we're gonna probably hit close to that for this year. Dues and fees, I left at 500 as well for them. Computers and supplies, I upped to just 250, because they may need some things either for our plat map printer or for, you know, they may need new monitors, new anything, and Lisa's down there now too, so we did just get her equipment this year. But I don't know, you know, all of our computers are gonna kinda need to get looked at some point in terms of, age and, you know, are we still good with stuff? We've all had some RAM upgrades and a motherboard change out here or there, but, so I did up that a little bit. Engineering salary is gonna stay 20,500. Same thing then we've got PERS and Medicare and workers' comp that goes along with that. Okay, now I was already on utilities. John, I'm gonna give that back because I think I'm good now. Moving on to utilities. Thank you. Page 3.
Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead.
Angela, the engineering, the salary, that is for Joe Gelati.
Yes, that is Joe Gelati.
And then in a separate section will be.
The
other
Chagrin
engineering.
Valley charges overall, correct. That's just Joe Gelati's salary. Yes, thank you. All right, utilities, 75,000 on electricity. That's where we're gonna roll in this year. It's where I left it. As I was starting to say when I was on the wrong page, I decreased natural gas a little bit. We've been very fortunate on that. We had it at 22. We're not gonna hit that mark, so I brought it down to 18. Now, of course, God help me if things go up, and I shouldn't have done that. But we'll assess. We can always assess partway through the year. Water and sewage, we've been fortunate. I do have some investigating to do on that Crick Road property because we have no water running in there. There's nothing happening, and they keep trying to bill us a couple $1,000s. So I'm still in discussion with the water department about that.
They've been billing another company, which was kind of nice.
But there's no water even in there, so there's nothing running. There's no, you know,
No.
Rob's checked multiple times for me,
So we don't know if there's an address mix-up or something.
Yeah,
Trying to
maybe.
get it straightened out.
Okay, now you'll note garbage and trash removal, we're gonna be, you know, the consortiums should hopefully right now already be in the works of looking for who's gonna be the next provider potentially. And based on where we're at this year, cause I still do need to add in November and then I'll have to add in December here, we're definitely gonna hit our mark of 165. So I kind of bumped us up to 180 and I'm hoping that that's all we're gonna need. So, you know, if we find out anything else before we were to get to the final, I will let you know in between this, you know, this week in between. I'll touch base with Rob on where the consortium might be with looking or where rates might be kind of falling as they're looking, if they've gotten that process started. Telephones, I upped a little bit to 26,000. That cost had gone up a little bit this year. And then other communications, you know, I left at 25,000, and that would be probably our internet. We do pay, you know, we pay Everstream for our internet, so that's what that is. Moving down to service department, this particular salary also up for the increase that we're awarding, and that's just George Gurman, our mechanic's salary in this particular line. I also left his overtime at 5,000, and then same thing. The PERS follows at the 14%, so 9,300. Set 975 for Medicare. Hospitalization, I bumped up just a little bit based on an increase anticipated. Same thing with life insurance. Workers' comp, I left it at 1,000. Uniforms and clothing, this particular line is Cintas laundering their work shirts and work pants. So we are above, and we're gonna be, you know, I've got 2 more months worth to put in, so we're gonna be above that 5,000 we budgeted clearly, so I put that up to 7,800. And then Rob and I will reevaluate from time to time. We had another company a couple years back and we switched to Cintas. So him and I will sit down and reevaluate, is this still a fit for us? Are we still getting, you know, is this still a good price for us based on where we were in the past and where prices are right now? Pro technical services in this line also I put in, I left it at 2,500. All right, down for the service department continued for land improvements, recycling. We don't have any expenses for that as of this moment. Operating supplies and expenses, I upped that to 10,000 based on Rob, knowing we might have some things that might come up and we might need a little more in that line. Repairs and maintenance of building and land, I left that at 75. Rob and I are going to revisit that together because we were talking about increasing one of our line items, but I increased the opposite two a little bit. And if not, I needed to net that out and put those back to where they were and increase this one. So this kind of is like all-encompassing when we do beautification around here and or we have repairs for all of our village buildings. It kind of fall in our you know, our land and property, it falls into this particular line. So that's why that's such a large one. Repairs of machinery and equipment, I left that one at 2,000. And then leaf dumping, I put a budget line in here. I've got it currently going into pro services somewhere, actually, I believe. But since I noticed that, yes, we do have a leaf dumping line. You know, we do have to pay a fee when we take our leaves. It's around $63 per dump. And so I'm putting that into this. I'm gonna move everything before the end of the year where we currently have it and move it into this line. And so I'm budgeting for it in this section for this next year as well. I'm taking it out of the other line. And then sanitary sewers, we do our own repairs sometimes on the sanitary sewers, so I just bumped that up a little bit to 7,500. Any questions on that before we move on to mayor?
Yeah, just a quick clarification on the leak dumping, you said 70, or $63.
Yes, we do pay about $63, $63.50.
Per dump or per ton?
Well, it's per ton, I should say, yes.
Okay.
But there's a lot that we do, so a lot that we don't. And then same thing with chipping. We take our stuff and we have to pay a little bit for that. All right, mayor, safety director salary. I wanted to give a little bit of an explanation here. So we know in this past year, we added the $7,000 back because when Mayor Kolograf was officially elected to his own term, he was not given the $7,000 that first year that he should have been and was entitled to for safety director. We did not retro pay that, but for 2021, we rectified that and made sure the $7,000 was there. And so this is part of the salary with the COLA increase, but we also, last year, we rectified and gave the $7,000, but the increase is, whenever we award an increase to employees, it also goes to his main salary and to the safety director salary. The $7,000 did not receive the 1.5% increase. So this particular figure is just a little bit more. It'll be 1.75 on the two portions based on this year, but I also brought it whole to that increase missed, it was like a $302 difference for the increase missed on the $7,000 last year.
He's always trying to get me a little bit.
No, I mean, we did, I should have caught it in the beginning of the year and didn't think to put the increase on it. So also same thing, the OPERS 14%, so that's $7,735, Medicare $800, life insurance $2, workers' comp $550, I'm sorry, and dues and fees for our organizations $1,500. Salaries for council, same thing. You will see your increase for next year. So you're at $72,130. Your PERS $11,000. Workers' comp, Medicare $1,028. Workers' comp $600. Dues and fees $500 for your organizations.
And I don't think that's correct.
One.
No, because we're one less.
There'll be one less.
Oh, you're right. That is
That's what I
one
was
less.
wondering about that.
Bonus, I'm sorry. You're right, I forgot. So that number will go down. I will adjust
There'll be one
that.
less person, so this
You
will
are
go
right.
down. Unless you want to
Plus,
give us all
you didn't
more
give it to
money.
me.
No.
Nah, if I'm-
Further
If I'm gonna disperse it, I'll disperse it to the fiscal officer, to the clerk of council. The clerk of council will take that extra. You are correct, I forgot totally about that. Thank you for reminding me. So those numbers will change just a little bit, I'm gonna take that out, and I'll get you an updated figure on that tomorrow. Yay, I like when we can shave some stuff off the budget. Not that I wanna have to only have 5 of you, but always nice to save money. All right, so mayor's court. Salary for the legal prosecutor, this is Marty's salary if you remember. So with the increase, that's gonna be $24,786.30. Magistrate by ordinance, we still have it $325 if you look up, so yeah, so that's gonna be $11,875 right there. And then mayor's clerk with her increase, that Nancy, $44,480. And then, so we had, this little comment should actually somehow tie out to the magistrate. Where did I put this? I know why, because the PERS number went up. So this particular past year, Janice St. John was doing our virtual court in Garfield, and Garfield was not just running a virtual court once a week. So she may have had to get on, several different times in 1 week for cases, and we had kind of paid her the same as we were, and right as we were about to get to saying, hey, let's start doing it this way and make it one set amount per month, they stopped doing the virtual court. So that's why there's a little bit of an imbalance in the PERS getting paid out, because Janice was making a little more on court this past year for the virtual. Medicare, $1,176. Hospitalization up to $23,000. I put that, and that's really Nancy, the other Marty, and it does not get hospitalization. Neither do the magistrates. I got nothing in there for life insurance. That's Nancy's life insurance is probably included with our administrative. If not, I'll put hers in, and she'll be close to $200 a year. So I'll double check that line. Because she does get a policy like the rest of us. All right, workers' comp $650. Training, I bumped up to $300. We do reimburse Blair, Janice, and or Marty for any training that they need to do, or if Nancy would have some training that she would need to do. Other pro services, I bumped that up to $1,500. And then I didn't put anything in their dues and fees. We didn't spend anything this year that, we might end up spending maybe 200 if we end up needing to do something, but I can add that in if needed. Office supplies and materials, I left at 1,000. She's not spent quite that much this year, but in other years, she may need, you know, jacket envelopes for tickets and things like that. Operating supplies and materials versus office supplies, I just bumped up to 300 from 100. And that would probably be, you know, if she needs a new, credit card reader or something like that. Okay, any questions before we move on to boards and commissions?
Yes.
Yes.
Could you clarify again on the mayor's report, the medical hospitalization?
That is for Nancy only. That's Nancy's, that's our portion we pay for Nancy to have medical insurance for family coverage.
23,000?
We pay 21,000, yes, yes. That,
Yes, for
Yeah.
21 per person.
oh yeah. That's the village's cost.
For one person?
Yep.
For one person to have family coverage. She's got a child still on. Mhm.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. That is it. Yes, absolutely. All right. Moving on to boards and commissions. Compensation for, planning, 2,500. I'm leaving that the same. You know, by ordinance, they're gonna get paid the same amount per month. You know, I think you guys get 40, right? Regardless of a meeting, and then if you have a meeting, it's 30 per meeting. Well, you don't, because you're already getting the mayor's salary. Sorry.
Well, you looked over and said,
Well,
"Is that what you
yeah,
guys
true.
get?"
I guess I
think you were
shouldn't ask.
talking the
I
rate.
forgot you two are, you know, ex officio members, so you get the shaft on that deal. Zoning, same thing. They get 40 per month if there's no meetings, but if there's meetings, they get an additional 30 for whatever meeting they've attended. So leaving that at 35, I'm gonna leave that at 3,500. And then their OPERS goes in, the total of their OPERS would be, actually, it might be a little bit more than that, because I might have to, oh no. I figured that at 350 for some reason. That should be 250 on, where that line says 350 on OPERS, that first one, that's for planning, that should actually be I'm sorry, no, you're right, 350, 14%. Thinking 10% in my head, employee portion's 10%. Okay, so 350 on the OPERS for planning, and the BZA is 490. And then their Medicare, 36 and 65 respectively, and workers' comp, 25 and 50 respectively. All right, AOS fees. It is an audit year next year, so I put in 15,000 for the audit budget based on what I paid out for the 2020 audit. And then my uniform accounting network, that's my accounting system. We budgeted 4,500, but the past couple of years we've only paid about 950 per quarter. So I'm gonna leave it at 4,000. It may not even come in at that much, just in case they have a price increase. Solicitor, so this is Mr. Montello's salary. So with his increase, 61,965. His OPERS, you're looking right here, I made a note for myself. He's lumped in, you see nothing under 2021, because when I book it in, it was actually put in a line with the magistrate and the prosecutor and all of them. So the OPERS line current in that section actually contains John's OPERS for this year, so I have to move that before the end of the year, so his budget will be 8675. And then Medicare 883, workers' comp 550, ProTech services. This would be Bricker and Eckler and any other legal services we would need. We were at 25 budget. Thank God we didn't have to hit that for any reason. We do use them for not only litigation, but I use them for bond counsel and things like that. So 20,000, I took that down to 20,000. When you get to the income tax section, I have my software through Municipal Income Tax Services. It's part of Baldwin, and so that's 2,500. And then tax refunds that we anticipate to pay back out to individuals and or businesses, 75,000. I'm gonna leave that the same. We came in a little under that this year so far. I do have another refund I have to process because the goofy state centralized processing system that Ohio started, where they take everybody and say, hey, if you owe money for companies, we'll do it all for you here. That is insane, and so they'll send us money sometimes and then ask for it right back. So I do have to refund something that they sent us that they didn't mean to for somebody. Any questions before we move on to our administrative section? All right. Salaries, this includes myself, myself, Lisa, Mary at the current time. So this top line here is the increase in pay for the three of us based on our salaries. And that's $163,283. What you see in here under part-time is I threw in 20,000 for a part-time position in finance, and that's estimated at about, I think I estimated at $18 an hour roughly for 20 hours a week. I ballparked that. That'd actually come out to a little less than 20,000, but I put that in there so we can see if it's something doable. Then again, our OPERS, based on both of those salaries, would be 25,659. Medicare, 2657. Hospitalization for, that's just, you know, we've got 2 people on coverage and various coverage levels there. I don't take medical here, so that's up to 30,000. I left it at 30,000 because we should still be okay with that number even if we have a little bit of an increase. Life insurance, 775, bless you. We pay life insurance for our retirees from here, so I'm gonna put that at 1375. And then workers' comp, 2,000. Meals and lodging, because I do go to some trainings, and anybody else is welcome to if there's some trainings in their field. I put that up to 1,500. OML conference that I attended this year, we went virtual at the last minute, so things are obviously cheaper when people go virtual. I anticipate to be back in person next year, and so there would potentially be the need to travel to Columbus for that. So that's why I increased that. Postage, 3,000. I left that the same. Machine rental, I upped to 2,000. Last year, I kind of skewed the budget a little on what I put in there because we had some outstanding invoices that were supposed to auto hit the credit card and they didn't, so they hit them this year. So I'm gonna put that up to 2,000. We pay roughly $160 a month for the postage machine. Printing and production, again, we pay for our copies just like they do, but we have only black and white, so police has color. We pay I'm gonna put that at 1,500. And then advertising, we didn't have anything in here, but we have to advertise when we do our bids and such for, you know, public hearings and for going out for bids for projects. So I'm gonna put 2,000 in there. I must have it currently in pro services, I'm sure I do. So when we pay Advance Ohio Media, that's probably coming currently out of pro services. Training, 2,500. I just left that the same. And then our professional technical services line, I took down to 130, and I didn't put it on here as a note, but let me give you an idea of what's in those line items. Bear with me a second. Currently, I've got ADP, our monthly payroll fees in there. I actually have Nancy's Baldwin group in there, so Nancy uses the Baldwin system as well, which is a different, obviously, type of system, but for Mayor's Court, same vendor that I use. And then some of our other insurance, like for the JET, I for some reason have in here. Carpe Diem, while you're live streaming meetings with them, our HR services, our services to Gasper, Ackland Printing, which is actually Gasper, and that's who does our journal. Associates in Lifestyle Management for our social work services. You know, that's just, you know, and town.
So Bricker and Eckler would be in there?
No,
for the
Bricker's
JED?
not in this one. Bricker's not in this one.
I know they got that separate for legal, but there, you mentioned the JED.
I didn't say anything about the JED in this.
Oh, I thought
No.
you mentioned that there was something.
Not in
some
this
fees
particular,
the
this is
JED.
our administrative, well, this is administrative pro services line that I'm going through right
Oh, I
now.
thought you mentioned the JED.
No, nothing about the JED for this. Tom Jordan's pay comes out of this line as our economic development director. So just some miscellaneous things like that. Our monthly for TCC for the computers, Connexo for the phone service, for, you know, for our voice over internet. So if there's any questions, you can always come see a detailed list of what I've paid out in there. And it's possible I will reclassify some of that as well, just depends. All right, so where was I at? Pro services, insurance and bonding, 75,000, as you saw, we're going up a little bit. We pay 2 installments each year, so I just now paid, so that 37 you see paid, it seems like, oh, we didn't pay out 75. Well, we're about to, because that's the second payment you're looking at from last year's policy, and now I'm about to pay the first payment on this 2022 policy. So that will come up to about 75. Dues and fees, I put at 7,500. Machinery and equipment I left at 2,500. And then contractual services here, and again, some of this I've just rolled with over the past couple of years, so I can reclassify it, but we've got 360 transcription service in there, and our administrative fees for the FSA, the flex spending account that we started offering for the employees, is currently what's going to be in that line item. And I didn't actually even change it, so I'm going to change it. I have it currently at what you're seeing it at. I'm actually going to probably keep that at 10,000, so that, and maybe not even. I'll reassess that. We pay about $300 and some a month for transcription services, depending on if we have, you know, 3 meetings or if there's extra meetings in the month. And our administrative fee on the FSA is down to $50 a month, I think, since I switched vendors last year. So I will adjust that number and tell you what it's going to be. I overlooked that one figure. Operating supplies and materials, I'm leaving at 4,000. oh, sorry, office supplies, I should say, and then operating, I'm leaving at 3,500. Payment to county treasurer, I'm leaving at 15,000. That's a yearly fee. Any questions on that section before we flip over to capital transfers? Okay, so this section here is all transfers out. You saw them on the revenue side as transfers in. So they're the wash to that. So for the Ohio Police and Fire Pension Fund, 75,000. The SCMR, 500. Interest to capital, 400, and then that water meter repair fund, 12,000. All right, moving on to SCMR fund salaries. This would be everybody, this would be Rob Kalman plus all of the other workers, and just not including George German on this one. With the increase, it's gonna be 376,958. Overtime, I left at 25,000. Again, they're over budget this year, but we did have, our street commissioner had to stay for a bit of overtime due to litigation, where he was collecting some things for researching on our litigation. Plus, we've had 1 million water main breaks this year, and extraneous things happening. So we've just had a little bit more going on than usual, but I'm crossing my fingers. I mean, especially even just with the litigation and time spent there by Rob, that should still be okay at 25,000 next year. This was an exception year. I put in here for Rob a part-time laborer, and I estimated it using our wage ranges at 13 an hour. That's in the middle of the range for 25 hours per week, year-round. So that salary would be 18,200. He did ask for a part-timer when he came in here. Now, if he needs it to be skilled laborer, that number may adjust. But I was just kind of thinking like it might be someone that's coming, brand new into
Like
the
a
department.
seasonal young.
Yeah, but instead of seasonal, I booked it for year-round, but I booked it at more of a seasonal type wage. And if Rob, after he goes over this with me, thinks that's not where it needs to be, that might just increase a little bit, just depending. All right, so the PERS for those combined wages would be 58,822, Medicare 5735. Hospitalization on everyone in that department, I bumped up a little. I left it at 87,000, I should say. And then 15, and I'm confident doing that because I know behind the scenes that some spouses came off of insurance and things like that. Life insurance for that group, 1,500 for the year. Workers' comp, 3,000. Uniforms and clothing, this is their actual. They get $250 boot allowance each, so that's what that $2,000 is. That's per year. Their Protect services right now, I've got chipping in here for some reason, so I'm going to move that. And then Guardian Alarm, that's what's in that line item. I know it's a random amount, $994, but so we're not going to necessarily need 10,000 in that line item. I'll probably make it closer to 1,000 for Guardian Alarm. It's another one I kind of just left and didn't look at. So. Operating supplies and materials, I brought that down just a little bit. They're not using as much, we're talking safety gloves and safety glasses and things like that. So that's the only line for Rob's department that I brought down. Fuel, I left at 25. Repair and maintenance of buildings and land, again, I upped this one. So if Rob were to say, no, I needed you to up the bigger line, I would move it back out of this. Actually, I probably wouldn't. We spent 18 this year, so I might leave that where it's at. But I'll definitely let you know if something needs to change on Rob's request on where he wanted more money in buildings and land. Repairs of machinery and equipment, I left at 20. And then motor vehicles, I left at 30, because as, like we said, we're there. And then salt, we're gonna leave at 130. We're gonna be, actually, I think we had just done a new salt consortium last year. I gotta check with him again. And so we purchased, we had a lot stockpiled last year. And then in early spring, we ended up doing the purchase of what was remained on our required amount. We have a set amount that we promised to purchase from a vendor when we go into that situation. So we did purchase all of that. So I'm gonna bump it up again because this year we may be through part of our supply and may need some more salt. And then this other section down here, we get a little bit from State Highway Fund toward our salt. So I'm leaving that at 15. That's roughly 15 every year. And I booked 9,800 out of what we spent in the current year there, as you can see. Law Enforcement Trust, I left their training budget at 6,000. And then there's nothing down there on motor vehicle license tax fund. Any questions before we move on to police pensions? All right. This is money that's going to come into us for the county on the police pension end of things, so I'm just going to double check my figure. I've got it at 195. I'm going to just make sure that's pretty firm. Property tax collection fees, leaving it at 1,500. Water meter, utility distribution system, that's one of those things we kind of pay out once a year, so I'm leaving that at 11,785. Computers and supplies for mayor's court, I'm leaving that at 3,000. And then here we go, so, principal on some bond retirement, 50,000 toward the, Dunham Water Main rehab. And then other debt service, you're gonna see the expense out as the 2.14 million that we took this year, because each year when we refund the notes, we basically pay back plus interest, which you'll see at another spot. And then we pay that same amount back, and then we just take out what we've asked for the current year. So that's why there's the difference of, I anticipate us taking 2 million to refund on the revenue side versus paying back the 2.14, because each year it's a short-term thing, and we repay back the whole amount. Any questions there before I go down to capital improvements? Okay. And so actually that 50,000 that's in that principal, that should be my interest. That's what we pay roughly in interest on that note. All right. So lots of notes in this section, capital improvements. Okay, so let me see. Other pro services here actually, and we've got an engineering services line, so I'm not sure why nothing ever ended up in there. But in this pro services line for $200,000, which I kept the same, that's Chagrin Valley. We had a lot more expenses this year due to the Dunham project, monthly, compared to typical. So I left it at 200,000. We're gonna go over this year a little bit, but I feel confident next year we don't have a large project like that, so we shouldn't go as far over. Down to the 27,000 for equipment on police, that's gonna be that Motorola lease payment that's coming due. Then we've got service department equipment. Rob asked about a chipper, and we're estimating the cost to be 50,000. That's a total estimate just on our part, not with anything, strong in hand. I don't even think we got a quote on what it was. Rob saying, hey, if I've looked around, they're running about 50,000. So
we bought that other one a few years
yeah,
ago.
exactly. We did look at that, yeah, because
Yeah.
that chipper wasn't even that old. And that chipper, not even being that old, I wanna say 2 to 3 years old, caught on fire recently. Just enough to melt all the electronics inside. So George was trying to, yes.
Yeah.
So George was, the wires, I should say, it melted. So George was working with that manufacturer. I know, right? Talk about when it rains, it pours here. So I included that chipper. You're gonna see motor vehicles road department 175. That would be one potential dump truck, and part of that funding is gonna be that 118 that we've gotten from, that we're going to get again from the ARPA funds. That is a legitimate expense for us because that's a service that we provide. We use it to plow. That's a service we're providing our residents even through a pandemic. So that's why I was able to put that in and see where we stand. Police at 55,000, that's one vehicle fully outfitted.
So that
I know.
175, I'm sorry.
That would be for one dump.
But should be offset by 118.
Well, it will be offset, and it is, I mean, you know what I'm saying? So I'm gonna list it as the 175, but that's the actual
I gotcha.
expense. Yeah, you got it, it'll be offset by 118. And then, which we've already gotten 118 this year, so that money's gotta stick to something, and we'll get the extra 118 the following year. So if, God willing, we are in a great position next year, we can revisit getting a second dump if needed, or another police car. So Stan asked for 2 cars, I believe, I did put 1 in here for sure to start. If you look at streets, highways, sidewalks, and curbs, that 450,000 expense is what it's the road program. And maybe it actually should only be 400, right? Because we were at 362, and I think I took our note for 4. So we're gonna change that, because that's not gonna be 450, that's gonna be 400.
Unless council wants to leave it at 450.
We can leave the 50 cushion in. It's not gonna hurt anything to leave it in. You can leave it there.
Why don't we leave it in?
Let's
We
leave it
can always
there.
take
Let's
it
leave it there for
out,
now.
and, if we need to, down
Let's
the
leave it
road.
there for now.
And
I did
if
have a
it's-
little bit of a cushion in this year as well, so we could
Everybody
leave
okay
it.
with that? I mean,
And
it's something we
sometimes-
know we're gonna be revisiting. when
And
it comes
sometimes
to
leaving it
road
in
repair.
helps with the timing of when we're starting a project versus when our grant money's coming in. Because right now, we're working on our road program, but our grant money for that's not gonna necessarily even come in until next year, so beginning of next year. So there we are for that. And again, this Veterans Memorial, I had crazy stuff in here. I don't know why I ended up grabbing this account several times on both ends of things, the revenue side too. So this you were looking at for this year is gonna get moved. That was Cerna Construction for something. And so that just needs to get moved to a pro services line or to whatever line it's associated with. On the last page, we've got Mayor's Court deposits applied. We don't do a budget for that. We've paid out this year $237,674. And this is again like the ins and outs of the bank accounts basically each month. So you see that we'll have it, same thing on the revenue side, because each month at the end of the month, I go in and I clear Nancy's account to make the adjustments for, okay, here's where she was at the end of last month, here's what she took in revenues, here's where she's at, here's what our expenses were, and make sure it all nets to where she's at with her actual budget. That's an accounting system type of thing. And then second party services deposits applied. Again, right now, that's lawn care, senior snowplow stuff right there. So we don't typically budget for it, not knowing exactly what's gonna come in, and again, because it's a wash. What we're gonna pay out to Sharpscapes, we don't take any profit on that or assume any expense on that service. And the JED, if we take in $750, we're gonna pay out $750. JED payments, the way they work, just for general knowledge for you, we pay 4 quarters in a year, but we're actually paying first quarter of the previous year in January, and then we pay our first, second, and third quarters of the current year. So that's how that gets paid out each year, but so that would be, the same exact amount coming in the revenue side. So all things considered, this should hopefully leave us with a balance of 267. We should be in the positive about 267,000 if I keep all this stuff in here. Questions? I tried to give everybody what they wanted, the best I could.
That truck, the dump truck.
Yes.
100 and, what was it,
175?
175?
Yeah.
Mayor.
Fred?
I have a question to talk about.
Come on to the mic, Fred.
Sure. I was confused when we're talking about the chipper,
Yes,
and you said that the chipper burned up.
that's what I just said, it caught on fire.
Rob told me that it was the new leaf.
Was it the leafer? Oh, then it was the leafer, sorry.
The new leaf.
Yeah.
Okay, either way, new piece of
Well,
equipment.
yeah, I would,
We're not budgeting necessarily for a leafer at this time unless he comes to me and says that one couldn't be fixed, but
You are
yes, you're right.
he's
Yeah,
getting
it
parts
was the
for it,
leafer.
but yeah, I just
Yeah,
wanted to
you're
make,
right.
when you
No, I
said that, I'm
appreciate
going
that.
like.
You're right, it was the leafer, not the
Okay.
chipper. Since that's what we're in the middle of doing, I guess I should have, that did make sense. We chipped first and leafed second. But yes, not a old piece of equipment by any means. But we could use a second chipper. Our chipper is very old, and it's only a matter of time before that's also gonna have an issue. As a matter of fact, I think last year it was down and we had to do something with Oakwood.
Yes.
Yeah,
I always get those two confused.
I know, me too. Leafing, chipping, it's all,
Thank you, Mr. Mills.
yes.
Keeping us straight.
Mayor?
Yes.
I'm sorry. For the dump truck, the 175, I know we talked about that in generalities as far as a lease, and we determined that a lease would not be beneficial to us.
We didn't quite determine that. Where I'm at with that lease, I'm glad you brought that up, because of course a lot goes on here and I get sidetracked a little bit. I gotta be ADD to work here. I had called, Valley Ford's been trying to get our business back. They are a state, they are a state vendor. And so Rob brought the figures to me from Valley Ford with the potential to lease. And I think I mentioned with the potential to lease, it was gonna be an extra $13,000 we were gonna pay out of pocket. So that would be less we'd incur, in a given year. However, she passed me over to their finance person at First National Bank, and I never did hear back from the gentleman because I wanted to make sure, can we do this? Is it gonna be feasible, or are you gonna tell me in the 12th hour, oh, yeah, no, you don't have credit, you're not gonna be able to lease? So I do still need to look into that. If that's the case and we're able to lease, I'll check on that tomorrow so that I have an answer for you soon. We could potentially do both. Then if I've got 175 in here now and leasing is an option, you guys can look at either leasing and taking that number down and having more of a profit at the end of the year, more of a black line at the end of the year, or we could potentially consider if we're gonna lease both and maybe have both in there. But I'll get to that. Let me do that
Is there an
tomorrow.
option for regular payments as opposed to a lease?
Probably. I can find that out too if I can ever get the finance guy on the phone.
Because I know regular payments are probably gonna be
Yeah.
less than a lease over time.
Yeah, I'm not super excited that the guy didn't call me back when I asked 2 weeks ago, because I wanted to have that info ready, when we
Don't they
started
know who we
discussing.
are?
Don't they know?
That's what my husband said.
Terry's
yeah.
gone now.
Yeah.
So I will make that call tomorrow and get back to you.
Along those same lines,
Yes.
I wanted to ask, with the chipper, or the leafer rather, and what happened with that, and police cars. We've had one police vehicle that's still out of service
Yes, a 2020.
that we just got. So I would really be curious if we could look into possibly a different make, model, and/or some of the lease programs that they
The
have.
make model's not my monkey, that's up to the discretion of the department heads, I would say, I guess, and the mayor, I don't necessarily.
I just personally would be a
There's
little
been
gun
problems with
shy.
Dodges too, I know Stan mentioned that.
But with the two new Fords that we had, and there was problems with both of them already.
Yeah, now leasing on that, you know, I just have to work with them because they have been going to Gillingham. I think that's just the relationship Mike Gervaisi has. So if we're going to do a lease type of program, we're gonna probably get all our fleet vehicles from the same place. Obviously, all would be state vendors, but we would probably wanna make that happen all through the same banking and the same place. That would make the most sense in my opinion.
So I'm just curious if leasing would be a decent option.
Well, that's,
Because
so
my
where we
understanding-
stand with leasing, Jennifer, is we don't know that we can based
Right.
on credit. We have not taken credit for anything. We've been able to pay cash or push it off and not do it in the past 10 years. So fortunate to pay cash for things when we need them. So a lot of times, like when I went out for the radios, the initial person that was gonna give us the credit on those radios was not gonna do it. So Motorola had a secondary option on that. So thank God. So we got credit through somebody, but it wasn't even the initial person because they were like, no, we're not gonna give you the credit. And we're talking only $80,000 for the radios. So, so that's why I'm waiting to talk to this finance gentleman and say, what do you need from me to do like a soft check? And see if we're gonna even qualify for this before I bring it up.
Well, my understanding is with some of, and this is why it would need to be looked into, but my understanding is from some of the other communities that do lease vehicles, that there's usually a 4 or 5 year buyback program for them, that we would resell the vehicles to them. So that's why I'm just curious if there's something else that we could look into before coming
The
up with
hard-
the definitive of what we're going.
The hard thing for us here is our vehicles, yes, unfortunately keep breaking down, and this last one was a newer one. However, we are a village, after me looking to other cities hold on to their cars a lot longer than we do. We had a discussion last year, I remember very vividly, around insurance time, where this random figure of 100,000 miles came up, and I checked with the insurance people, and they said, we still cover you over 100,000 miles. There's a lot of cities and villages
Yes, that
keeping their
doesn't
cars.
exist.
That does not exist. So in a little bit of a sense, we've gotten new cars every year I've been here, so part of me is like, okay, this is a little bit of a smaller town here. Do we really need new cars every single year? Now, by nature of them, of course, breaking down, I mean, I guess I'm concerned about how are we putting so much wear and tear on just our cars here in this small vicinity of a village that we've needed new ones every single year? You know, why has there not been one year we could skip getting a car and then take it over to another department that needs a vehicle? Because Rec's gonna be needing a vehicle soon too.
Well, we did go
so-
that, we did go that route, and that's why we do have some older vehicles.
And well, and that was probably prior to me getting
We did have some
here.
years where we didn't.
So-
But we can look into those. Let's
So
look
we're
into-
16, 17, 19, 20, 21. We're 5 years into purchasing since I've been here, though we've gotten at least one, if not two vehicles every year.
No, that's true.
So, and we're not, you know, usually ours aren't going out. I did get from Stan the mileage, and I asked Rob and George the same thing, give me your vehicles, their age and their mileage, so we know where we're at with everything.
Yeah,
So-
it had been described to us in the past that the Ohio plan did not insure over 100,000 miles for a car that was being used in pursuit. My response to that was, well, we're 7 square miles.
Right.
You know, how much?
So I'll double check that with Joyce and Pat Hickey.
Yeah.
But when I asked Joyce about most recently in general, and I didn't get specific because I know now we haven't been with Ohio Plan the last couple of years. It's been, well, it has been, but Tokyo Marine. She said, I know I'm not sure where that would have even come from because you've got plenty of cities with vehicles a lot.
Oh, yeah, and
Lot
that
more
was
mileage than
my-
yours.
my-
And Pat Hickey told us that too. in the
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, exactly.
Yep. Okay, so Rob's saying it was, leafer caught on fire, chipper's 17 years old. So yes, he did also clarify for us. So questions? Sorry, I think we were at the end of that, so if you've got questions.
Yeah, I just had one quick question. Going back to the Veterans Memorial Fund.
Yes.
Professional services, can you explain that expenditure, the 24,
There's not, like you said, nothing belongs in there. I accidentally put something in there,
okay.
and that was Cerna Construction that needs to get moved to somewhere else.
So,
I was having fat fingers on the 49 lines this time for some reason on the revenue side too.
so what was the Cerner construction project?
I would have to go look and see what that particular project
So it
was.
doesn't belong there, it goes somewhere.
It goes into, yeah, it'll go into wherever it belongs, either in
supposed to
buildings,
go.
maintenance and land, or it'll go into, you know, yeah, if it was something else that's construction related. It could have even potentially been something there was a reimbursement on, but I just have to move it to the correct.
They have used them this year for some asphalt
We did use them,
repairs
yep,
and
we
stuff.
used them on Laurel Drive, and that's something reimbursable for that cost share
Right.
program, so, yeah. So I just gotta see what, you know, move it out of that
They
line and
use
put it
them
where
on
it belongs.
construction job, if they open up the road to make a sewer repair, Rob will use them. So it's
And then
probably quite a few.
Rob did mention again that they need 2 dump trucks. Any other questions? I've tried to put everybody's wishes in here. I will follow up for sure on the leasing on the dump trucks. If we want to change vendors though and buy something different, a different brand, again, that's up to Rob and or Stan to go get the quotes and things like that. And then would we be able to lease, does Chevy have a state vendor program? I'm sure they do, or look, I'm just using that as an example. And then would we be able to get a lease through them too? That's two, you know what I'm saying? That, my only thing is if I'm using Ford for everything and I can go through Valley and go through one lender that's gonna check our credit and say, yep, you're all set. Versus now I gotta get a credit check over here and maybe I am able to lease over here, but now I'm not able to lease over here. Cause now this is a different, I don't know. So I can hash that out with Rob and Stan and see their thoughts. But I am no expert on, I currently have a Ford. I didn't drive Fords before, I drove Chryslers, like, so I kinda go with the flow of, you know, what my husband and my mechanics are talking about. I like my Ford, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying nothing, Ford's fine, my Ford's been great, I have an Explorer, Fred.
The reason one car is not bad, they can't get parts.
Right, exactly. I mean, but what's concerning is it's a 2020 vehicle, it's not even that old of a vehicle, we just picked it up last year, so,
Those two that when I was still with them,
yeah,
the two,
yeah.
they didn't come in right away.
No,
No.
no, we have them made. Yeah, when we budget, we end up having them made, so like, I'm just now paying for a vehicle that we budgeted for 2021. It finally came in, and I'm just now paying for that vehicle. So that's a whole year almost, you know, we appropriated for it last December, and here, and I believe Mike got the paperwork going early on in the year, I wanna say by March. So we're just, you know, it just became ready a couple, you know, like a month ago, and we just got the invoice for that recently, so,
Angela,
yes.
did we ever lease anything?
Not in my time here, you probably have in the past, but not the 5 years that I've been here.
We've talked about it, I know we've talked about it, leasing and stuff, but no.
You might have been fortunate, you know, you had Ford with all that money coming in, so you probably paid cash for everything, you know, you probably paid outright for everything.
No, but after the you know. the-
But after, since then, right, I don't think you've leased is what I'm saying.
What about the state?
We always get
Are we
state money.
required to buy it by the state, you know?
You need to, a state vendor yeah, that's who you should really buy from. They're
Did
gonna
we
give you
ever
the best
check?
pricing.
Did we ever check with other communities? I remember years ago when I bought a car, I bought it in Massillon, and the tax was lower, and I saved $2,000 on the car because they were hungry to sell
That,
out in these little areas. So if there's some farther out, that rather than the auto mile that we have here.
the
you know.
thing about that potentially, and I'm just throwing this out there, if Rao's listening, he can probably chime in and he'll know what I'm talking about. We've got specifications, so versus I'm a consumer and I'm going to a lot and they have inventory to get rid of, we have specifications on our vehicles that we need. So Gillingham knows what they're building in a police vehicle specifically for Walton Hills. Rob would go with his specs to the dump truck dealer and say, this is what I need on this dump truck. A little more customization there, so I'm not sure we'd get quite the same discount. Certainly saving on tax would be great, but
if it's within the state,
you're gonna also pay tax on where it's registered too, so you're right, so, you know what I mean? you're gonna register it here in
But
Hennepin
but a
County.
dump
The
truck's
state's
a lot
supposed to
different
guarantee,
than.
the state pricing's supposed to be the lowest
Yep, should be,
that they can offer you.
Supposedly.
yes.
Yeah.
Supposedly, yeah.
It's not always the case, though. I mean, I have some experience where you check the state pricing, and then you still kind of.
Have wiggle room somewhere else.
And bids sometimes can come in.
So, yeah, I mean, I can certainly tell them to look at other,
State pricing doesn't make the process easier. because you
Rob
don't
said that was
do-
correct for the
you don't have to go through the
specifications.
bidding process, but
It's just
not
volume.
always the key.
yeah. But Rob and Stan can certainly look to other places. I know, like I said, Valley Forge, we haven't used in a while, and they reached out to me a year and a half ago to say, hey, you haven't purchased from us in a while. Can we get back in for you to consider us? And so Rob has done that on his end with his needs. And I don't think Stan's necessarily tied to Gillingham. Again, that was just more of a relationship that one of our officers had with that dealer. And so, and I do believe they're a state dealer, but maybe not. I can tell them and ask them if they've checked any other, to see if we could get a better pricing that's not with a state vendor. Because
I mean, the bottom line, that number in there is gonna be a real number.
it's gonna be pretty darn
I mean,
close, absolutely.
you might save a little, but it's not gonna change that number enough to adjust it. Wouldn't you agree to that? I mean,
Yeah.
whenever you go with it, whatever. To the point where you're gonna, it's a real number.
Well, this number, Mr. Mayor, makes me feel good. The 267,000 number. Hopefully that stays. We always have.
The only thing that could skew that,
Hang on a minute.
Yeah.
Whoever.
Well, yeah, there's a lot that, I was gonna say that, there's a lot that could skew that. We know that we always end up with more expenses, something breaks or whatever, and we have to get it fixed. But, if we can do this again next year, with our income, we'll be in good shape, for our road program, Barclay Estates, and getting some things done, that, with our infrastructure that we need to do. We won't have to borrow as much money and things like that.
Rob did say state bid vendors, make more money on upfits, like the safety equipment, et cetera. So that's where they make up the difference. One other thing I did not really put in here yet, and Rob will hear me on this, as I say it, I overlooked, we need a condenser across the hall, and Rob got one bid from Smith and Obie, and he's working on getting other bids. So I believe we were at 25, close to 30,000 for that condenser. So that's gotta go somewhere as well, now that I'm thinking about it. Rob can talk to me tomorrow about where he's at with bids. But that's something we're gonna have to put in, is the condenser for across the hall at the community room. So we will have HVAC needs. I mean, we put off doing a roof this year, but we also have HVAC needs that we didn't even bring up. So, each year things are still gonna kinda, hopefully it starts ironing itself out.
But we know
but
that's a
there's-
big expense. We probably
It is a
should
big
put this
expense,
in.
absolutely. So that's what I'm saying, though, you're still gonna have that roof and then HVAC at some point, because we've been spending, okay, Rob said 45K for that
46,
condenser.
yeah. Are we gonna put that in here?
I can put that in there. Let me, Rob, if you're listening, do you think that that's something that's gonna get done in the beginning of the year now that we're this far into December? I'll wait for him, he can chime in on that, just, yeah, he's waiting on a second bid. So, judging by where we're at in December, I'm gonna guess that condenser's not gonna go, we need it in sooner rather than later, obviously, because once it starts getting warm, we're gonna have a problem, but,
Well,
That's the
can we
50,000.
get it?
can we get it? Yeah, that I'm not sure.
I mean, it's a regular, of course, that's a different type of piece of equipment, but, you
It
go to
is.
the stores and they already have, and we're looking for a refrigerator for one of our refrigerators busted. And they already have signs, 4, 5, 6 months out for delivery,
Yeah.
right
But
out
if
of.
we can't get them, we'd have to repair you. What we don't wanna do is
Yeah.
keep putting you.
We put a lot of money.
Yeah.
in those
Yeah,
things,
but I mean, it wouldn't be,
But yeah.
if we didn't get it, then we'd have to bite the bullet and repair it, because we'll have to have it.
Yeah, well, I'm
You know.
talking about putting it in the budget and getting it ordered.
Right.
I'm hoping that it would be feasible to have it ordered. I've got an outside organization where we've been getting bids on the same types of things, furnaces and condensers, and nobody has said that they're not available. So, Rob, if you have any insights on whether or not the condenser is actually gonna be available from
Well,
any of the
we're gonna-
vendors, let us know.
I thought we were gonna put it in the budget.
Yeah, I will put it in, that's what I'm saying, I do need to add that in, it's something I wasn't even thinking about because it fell off my radar.
So that's gonna change the bottom
So
line.
that'll change it a little bit, yeah, yeah.
So we're talking, well, we're talking $200,000.
Right.
A
Yeah.
little bit about that.
Yeah, still to the good, and then things could change if we lease, if we're able to lease, and things would change with that.
Angela, do you know, or Rob, would you know if there's going to be another diesel mitigation grant that could possibly apply for? Because I know Rob had
He
said something
did
about a
apply for it.
smaller, he said, I'm talking about in the future.
Oh.
Because Rob had said something also about a smaller truck.
Okay, Rob, if you're listening about the diesel mitigation grant, where do we stand with that? Is there something in 2022 to apply for? On the smaller truck you were looking for?
Because he said that truck was, you'd get about 36,000.
Yeah, well, that's in addition to these two dumps.
Right.
Well, we can get back to you on that. At least-
Yeah, I'll wait till Rob answers.
Sure. Just that
Um,
our current ones, again, were from 93 and 94.
Right.
So I will update the few things I needed to update in here, some of the smaller things, and I will get info on the leasing and put in a line, okay, so Rob said, unfortunately, the diesel mitigation grants were trending toward electronic vehicles now.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, that answers that. And I thought he and I did have a conversation about
I
that.
just saw an ad, I don't know how good they are, but I just saw an ad for an all-electric pickup truck.
An all-electric pickup?
It was an F-150, I believe it was. I have
We're
no
gonna buy it
idea
from
how
Lord-
good
we're
they
gonna buy
are.
it from the Lordstown plant.
Yeah. I have no idea on the ratings or what they will be.
Are we still in
What
line
is
to
it,
get
mall?
that charging station here?
Oh, you wanna know about that? No.
No, we're gonna reapply. They wanted to put it up here, but we felt, the chief and Rob and Joe Gelati felt, especially the chief, that it'd be better fitted in and myself, our commercial area, not our residential area, which just kind of fits in here. Like on Court Day, our parking lot is full there. People can go in and out all the time.
Well, it was just
So-
one charging station though, right?
No, it was more than one. Yeah. But we're reapplying for it. So, when we, talk to them, so there's a chance they'll put it somewhere else next year. So that's what we're hoping for.
Rob said we currently need 2 dump trucks that are 36,000 pounds each, and they don't make electric vehicles, so that size. No, Rob, I think we were just talking pickups over here, definitely not dump. Wouldn't want to try to push snow and have the electrical vehicle crap out in the middle of pushing snow. So keep in mind, everybody, I won't be here for next week's meeting. My children have their big fancy Trans-Siberian concert that they do. But what I'm going to do, so you have the week, I'll give you the updates on this. I'll have hopefully November figures all ready for you in a couple days. And then you can mull things over, ask me questions so that I can give you some answers before next week's meeting. But we also have some COW minutes to catch up on, and so I'm gonna put all those on your agenda for next week while I'm not here, so you can review and approve minutes, so that by the end of this year, maybe we're, pretty much caught up with minutes of our last couple of meetings. And if there's anything else in between that you think you guys need to discuss when I'm not here, but you have questions about or need my input on, just let me know.
And what we can do is we can have a COW meeting before the last council meeting too, at 7.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just in case we don't get it wrapped up. I mean, I
So,
still think,
I'm sorry, let me get back. What I'm gonna present for you in this next week, once I give you these figures, when you actually vote on the budget, you're just looking at the expense side of things. If you recall, it's gonna be broken down into those just few sections. And then our transfers and everything. So I will get that prepared as well, so that you see that for next week's meeting, that what you'd actually be voting on, the legislation, and what it will look like. I will prep that, based on any questions that come up in between this discussion and next week. And then also, I'm sorry, before I forget, Mayor, one of the other things we're going to need to do Within our wage rates, we're gonna be over on a few. And there was another one or two I missed last year that we ended up over on somehow. So, just to give you a heads up, I'll draft legislation. We're gonna go over, with this new 1.75 COLA increase, we're gonna go over for auxiliary officers part-time. Mechanic will go over. Street commissioner will be over a little bit. I'm sorry, hold on. And then,
So we have to
building
adjust
building
260
clerk will be
down
over, right, we'll have to adjust 260. Building clerk will be over, and mayor's court clerk will be over.
We have to adjust those.
We'll have to adjust
January.
those, just because that raise is gonna bump them out
I
of
know,
range.
but we're going to have to adjust them before January,
Yes,
because we ran
Yes.
into that same problem.
yes, we do every year run into this problem, so, and, you know.
Well, if we can do it after Jan, we just would have to retro that.
Well, true, right, if we
That's all.
waited on that, we would just not do their increases and retro that. I mean, that's a little messier, but, you know,
Yeah,
however.
but you don't want, my point is, you don't want to pay them more and not have the
Correct.
260, because we did
Correct.
that.
But yes, we had to do it last year, right, which is why I'm
And
trying,
it's- it's a
That's
bookkeeping
that's why I'm
mess.
trying to time it up with your
Yeah,
voting on the
And the
budget.
auditors don't like it.
Right, right.
They would rather see us retro it,
Yeah.
correct? Isn't that
Well-
what we made clear?
They would rather see you retro, but if you can get it passed, then you would get it passed. That's the easiest thing to do. It's not,
Well, okay, but I just, that's,
it would make a
there's
little.
other things in 260 we need to talk. If you think
I
we get it
know,
done
but
by
I
January
no, I
1st,
think
so-
this needs to go, do you know what I'm saying? Like,
All right.
as of right now, this is what I'm saying. Just, it'd be cleaner and easier to go ahead and do these if we're able, when we do the budget at that meeting. Because to have to pick out and pluck out like 6 people that are gonna need to be retroed, and especially because the timing, we're gonna, if we pass it in January, then we're still right there, right behind when we awarded it, so. I don't know, I mean, you guys can decide that later, but I'm just throwing it out there that we have these few that are gonna need to be adjusted.
Correct. And put it together then.
Yeah, so I'll put that together.
And what we could do, if we could, if, for the budget for next week, we might end up having a special council meeting, for, litigation and economic development. So, at the time, I can talk to you if we did wanna put the legislation and the budget on first reading. And then do, you know, that's up to, and at least you get a chance to look at it again. You know, I mean, you're gonna look at it, but look at it in legislation form too. You know,
And then
just,
one last piece of legislation I'm gonna have, I didn't put in transfers last year when we approved the main part of the budget. I have the money from Dunham from our note last year sitting in special bond retirement, and I do need to be able to transfer that over to capital so that everything zeroes out. So I'll put together a piece of legislation for that transfer.
Maybe it's real, if I may, when you do amend 260, include the next year's raises for that range, so we won't have the same problem.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I can go through and do that. I mean, I can. I know that council wanted to look at 260 as a whole at some point and compare to other cities to see where we're at. So you'll be revisiting this again anyway, since that didn't take place this last year. Okay, anything else? I'm done with my stuff. You still got a meeting to go, so I almost forgot.
no, you're all right. Everybody good with the budget draft?
Yeah.
So have your questions ready, because I don't know if I'll be able to answer them as well as Angela.
And
I know
she's
I
not
won't.
getting interrupted. Oh my
I know I
God,
won't
this
be
show is so
able to,
fantastic.
be honest with
I wouldn't
you,
hear
so.
you if you called me during this show with all the noise going on and
No,
the lights and
I know that.
craziness.
But I just want, any questions we don't get answered, like I said, I'm planning on having this, I think, a COW meeting before the council meeting. That way we can kind of just tidy everything up, have our council meeting, and that would be good, because we all know that this is, we want to really be, it's important. Not that we can't amend it, I mean, we got a very conservative budget. We're in the black, I think it's a very good budget. We are getting some of the necessities that are needed at the same time. So, also an increase to the employees, and so I think it's a really good budget. Appreciate you put it together, Angela, along with the department heads, and did a great job presenting it.
And I like your little boxes.
Well, yeah,
I do too, I thought that was.
Try and-
I love the boxes, yeah, that was great.
okay.
Because we make notes and
Yeah.
my handwriting, I probably my own writing, since I
Half
can't
of
read
this,
later.
half of my time was, how do I get these to print? I know how to put the comments in, but I'm like, how do I get these comments to print on here now? And then some were way out, and I'm like, I'm formatting comments, that's what half of my time spent on here.
So
Logistics.
anybody, any more discussion on that before we? Other business, the only thing I have, just to kind of, you guys received it, you know, about the smart grid pole that went up the street here. Not all residents know. I was waiting for
I
some.
didn't
I didn't get
receive anything. I
Oh,
had to
Rob
ask
sent it
you.
to us, did you?
No, yeah, all council, you'll have to look, because everybody's on it, we'll have to look, so, yeah, Rob sent it to everybody on the day it went up Friday,
It's an email.
Mhm.
yeah, in an email.
You probably did send it to me,
Oh,
not to
yeah,
my
we'll forward to your
email.
other
Yeah.
one, and your other one.
Apologize for that, Gloria, but, so,
I got it.
here's what the, I'll read the memo, just so.
Okay.
Mayor, First Energy installed the utility pole in the right-of-way at 7460 Walton Road. Village-owned parcel on Walton, that's that property that we own. But it's not, it's actually in the utility easement. It's not. The pole is 100 foot tall and is part of the First Energy Smart Grid system. The utility pole and antenna are permitted to be in the utility right-of-way. I did talk to Kevin Smalley because I wanted him to give me a little more detail than that. Okay, and because I would like to maybe put a little blurb in, because people are curious. And he hasn't given it to me yet.
Is this for the
And he
electric cars?
promised me he'd have it to me before my meeting today.
Oh.
So I gotta
These
get
are the
on.
ones
What
that
are they
are,
for?
That's it's for what it does, what he explained to myself and Rob is, it is part of the smart grid. It will monitor not just our community, but other communities, and there's other ones around.
Oh, yeah.
Our power unit,
Yeah.
usage, and whether or not there's a problem. So if there is an outage, they can pinpoint it themselves through their smart grid, not wait for anybody to call, and go to those areas.
Mayor Bedford also got one installed with no notice, hardly 1 day's notice.
I know.
Same day, we were kind of surprised as well. I'm sure you are.
Yeah.
I drove past it on Friday and I was like, wait a minute, that wasn't there.
Yeah, me
That was
too.
there
I
earlier
think
today.
it's a monstrosity. I really do.
It's
I
100
mean,
foot
I
tall.
was driving here this evening, looking at this, we have spaghetti over our heads to begin with. And then I turned on Walton, I came up Hicks, turned on Walton, and there it is. And not only that, but they have put, they're either receivers or transmitters or both on other poles and they stick out. And it's like, it's like almost overwhelming this, all this stuff over our heads. And I'm just, obviously they're not going to move it, they put it there for a reason, but I'm just wondering, isn't there any place else along their easement back somewhere where it wouldn't be so obtrusive? Because that, I mean, to me, I mean, you go down Walton and it just, to me, it looks horrible. And if I were living in those houses close by, I'd be screaming about that. Obviously, I'd be blowing in the wind, because there's nothing they're gonna do about it. But, to me, it's awful.
Yeah, I do think they're very obtrusive also. That one is, most especially, and I think because it's so tall. I don't think you notice them on Alexander as much, especially by the park area, because of the trees,
Right.
you know, around there, but that is an extremely tall pole on Walton.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know how they found the tree so straight, my God. Yeah, believe me, we weren't happy about it.
I don't know
Okay.
why they couldn't have put it on one of their existing towers. You know, I'd like to know that information as to why they decided to stick a 100-foot pole right there.
Well, I will tell you this.
In front of an empty lot.
I will tell you this. Mr. Kevin Smalling said to me, if you would like me to come to one of your meetings, so maybe I'll have him at the COW meeting next week, since we kind of fill in a little bit in too, you know what I mean? Let me see if he's available, and we'll go from there. How's that? I'm waiting for more detail. I mean, you know, because we just wanted to get something out there, so at least answer. Some people thought it was the 5G. They thought it was a private company. You know, besides the people who've seen it put it up, because of course.
Well, you had information about them when they were first going up, Mayor, didn't you, in the Journal?
Yes,
Yeah, but it wasn't.
not much.
Yeah, and this
Wasn't
was
an
a little
eyesore.
different. This,
It wasn't as obtrusive, yeah.
yeah, and this was a,
Wasn't an eyesore.
it's, yeah,
It's like a missile standing there.
but I'll see if Kevin can come to the meeting. Okay. Any other business? Okay. Otherwise, I ask for an adjournment.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion for adjournment to the COW meeting of December 7th.
Oh, wait, excuse me, we will stall your motion for 1 second. I'm sorry, Jeff, you had a question?
Can I go back to something an hour ago?
Yes, of course. Can you come up to the mic, Jeff, though? I didn't see you back there, I apologize for that.
Jeff Alexander, 7312 Walton. I agree with the community center is a great asset to the community. And you said it cost us like $981 last year?
No, 18. 18, when it was, we were renting it out to everybody, and we had it almost rented out all the time. We spent about $981. I have the.
That was year one.
That was
Year one of the rentals.
pre-COVID.
Right, and that's nothing, you know, that kind of money for what we have. And then, do any other communities rent to residents only, or is it first come, first served like we have now?
A lot of,
Seven Hills rents to residents only.
yeah,
only?
yeah,
Okay.
we wouldn't be breaking no new
Okay.
ground.
And one other thing, I know we charge for the pavilion and the baseball diamond at Young Park, like the RC track. Does the village get any revenue from that?
Not that I'm aware of.
No revenue.
Okay. And we paid for that, the village did? To put that in and maintain
Yeah, kind of, well.
Yeah.
it? Because, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
a-
we paid, we did budget money,
Right, I
Couple
mean,
years
that's,
ago.
Yeah.
I wish Denny was still here, because I confronted him one other time, I know he's not here, that he's, there, you know, his little club or whatever, he complains about these other expenditures, and they're using village property for their club or whatever it is. It's just
Right.
thought.
no, it's a good point. You know, the park, we all know when you go up, you feel is underused too. You know, you go up that beautiful park and you feel terrible. You know, when my kids were younger, and a lot of us in here, and Mr. Nielsen, and Brian, and Denny even before us, and Jennifer growing up here, and Mary, that park was used a lot more. And it's not because we've done anything wrong. Society's changed, you know? A lot of kids play travel ball. You don't have the big rec programs in the suburbs like you do. You kind of have them more in the inner cities, but you just don't have them. It's not because we didn't do nothing wrong. The park is beautiful. I don't care if somebody says the park looks terrible. That park looks the same, if not nicer, than when I moved here. The grass is well cared for. It's manicured. It's clean. We have some things that need some improvement, yeah. Those tennis courts have looked that way since I've been in the village. Doesn't make it right, but we have to compare it because of finances. But the park's still But you know, on that note, Jeff, it's kind of, if someone's using it, and I know what your point, and I get it, and I appreciate that, but, you know, if someone's using it, that's better than nobody using it, you know? Because believe me, there's times when I just feel like, you know, let's look in the mirror, look at both sides, you know? Not, in our position, we view it every day. I can't look at just what Don Colograph likes, or what you like. Like, I got, in this position, just like you, I gotta look what every resident likes. There might be, I might just be like the sports, and somebody might say, hey, I don't care about the sports, but boy, that track is nice to walk around. Or just go up there and sit there and read a book, you know, listen to the birds. So it's, you know, it's,
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
and just, when I was growing up here, I was there every day. There were so many children, so many. There just aren't children here like there used to be. I mean, the demographics in the village have changed. It's an older population, and that's not bad, but it's just that the baby boomers, we were packed. I mean, you know, and now, I mean, Fred remembers, he was even older than I am, so.
Oh, no debating here, no debating or arguing.
I didn't mean that in a negative way.
All right.
No, but you remember what it was like. So it's just different.
Thank you, Jeff. Anybody else, any other comments before we ask a,
Well,
I'll probably have you read it again, Jennifer.
I would say, just about that, with the last census that we had, we've got 255 kids that are 19 to 1 in the village now. So we're starting to make another turn.
We are.
Well, that's good.
We're
I
seeing
didn't know
it.
that. You're seeing an increase,
We're
yes.
seeing it at our events. We're seeing it like we talk. I see it in my neighborhood. Younger people walking dogs,
Good.
just moving in. You see it, or when you drive around, you see younger people walking and more kids, and it's a good thing. I mean, you know, to make a statement sometimes that there's nobody there is a tough statement to make if you're not there. I'll just leave it at that.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion for adjournment of the COW meeting of December 7th, 2021.
Second.
I got Mary first, sorry. Councilwoman Allen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Brenner Miller?
Yes.
Councilman Linville?
Yes.
Councilman Spitznagel?
Yes.
Councilman Whedon?
Yes.
Councilwoman Chowowski?
Yes.
Meeting adjourned at 9:49. Thank you, everybody. Before we start our special council meeting, I just want to let everybody know we're having a special council meeting, and if council so desires, we will go in executive session. We will come back and reconvene. There won't be any legislation or any discussion. Just we will come back out of executive session and reconvene. So we'll start the
I'm
special.
gonna, actually, now that we're mentioning it too, I'm going to, when I end the live stream after this portion now, I will end the live stream when we go into executive session, so I won't really be able to come back to the live stream again once we reconvene, since there's nothing else happening. That'll be it, when the live stream ends, when we go into executive session. Thank you.
Right, so the meeting will
'Cause I have
still
to
be,
hit end
thing, but you
broadcast,
won't, the meeting was still an open meeting. Out here, we'll be in executive session, we'll come back out, reconvene, but we won't be able to get back on with them. Okay. So at this time, is everybody ready to start the special council
Give
meeting?
me a minute. Let me get ahead and take care of all this. Take a quick break if you need it.